Hey guys, this is Velde from Moji here. Danish Counter-Strike is one hell of a drug, but so is Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is going to be another one of my donated discussions, and we've got a smaller crew for this one. Basically, if anyone's watched the last few, I think all these people, except I think Laggy missed the last one, but he's generally been on, like, let's say, like 4 of the last 5 or something. It's a pretty regular crew at this point in time, and people know how I do this. In general, I'll let you guys kind of lead the discussion of the topic, and because I mean, I always come up with my own angle anyway. So, who wants to start this one? What about Laggy? You're making your glorious return. Do you have a topic that's burning in your mind, mate? There must be a lot going on in the CS world that you're thinking about, mate.
Yeah, there is. I want to talk about Fnatic, but you talked about that a lot last week and haven't watched that episode yet.
Well, do you have any super unique angle you haven't heard people talk about?
I'm just surprised that they say that they couldn't find any Swedish players for like 3 years. And then we see a lot of young Swedish players playing in Premier, we see Advanced, we see young ninjas forming, we see them beating real teams. I don't really see how... They said that there were no talents, but according to me, it's just bad scouting.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one area I think actually, that's the topic we didn't discuss. Like, one thing I would say that is a problem there is it's why, I don't know if you remember this, but last year, when that whole scenario happened where MIBR played against Yeah Gaming, and I think it was the CS Summit RMR, and obviously the infamous context of that game was that technically a player in MIBR's starting lineup, Taco, owned part of the team he was playing against. A point me and Richard actually made on By the Numbers, because you have to give the devil his due, was I actually feel sorry for Nicola Nyholm in that scenario, because he essentially tried to own all these different teams so he could do things like that, like own a team that you could play against, you could maybe tell them to lose, you could take the player from one team, like a farm team. There's a million upsides, depending on who you are, to having like multiple team ownership. But the problem is, cause Valve in theory had nerfed all of that, it means if you're a team at the top of the game like Fnatic, your problem is when you're at the top of the game with your players, at that time you're not looking for the next talent because you don't need them, you've just got the best players already. But how are you supposed to develop talents to make the jump from way below your level up to your level? Now, if something like an academy team existed, well, we know it could work. That's where they actually got Golden from, if people don't know. That's where, obviously, in North's case, they had a whole bunch of players that end up being Mad Lions players, Heroic players, like a whole bunch of the teams you'll have thought of recently. So we know, in theory, that would be a way to find the talent. It's just that at the moment, it wasn't really allowed in the same way. It's actually one of the reasons I made the point that another reason it's sad that Flashpoint failed is my dream would be, if Flashpoint succeeded, one of the obvious next steps would be make a development league below and have every Flashpoint team have a team in that league, and it would be a way you could get actual real treatment in like the facilities and coaching, and you'd have something to play for, but you would never interact with the main team. You wouldn't play in the same qualifier. You wouldn't get into any of the conflict of interest scenarios. Because I agree, the problem is, from the outside, from a sports perspective, it's just a failure of Fnatic, the org, and the coaching staff, right? It is their job to go and scout these people. The problem is, it's pretty fucking hard. Like, I will say, even in a game like Counter-Strike that I do think I have a very good eye for, it gets really tough when you go too many divisions below, in my opinion. Like, if you go and watch an ESEA Premier game, it's really hard to tell who's actually good, and because, like, basically the level of play is going to be so much lower.
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on that, Laggy? Like, do you actually have a specific person you blame for this, or some area you think they were deficient in?
No, but not really. You can blame Karn, but he's busy with other stuff.
Yeah.
Samuelsson was also taken from... He was one of...
Yeah, he was the coach of the academy team, yeah.
And manager. And then he became manager for the main team. And then he became manager and coach. And now he's just the coach, and they're looking for a new manager, if I remember correctly.
Ah, okay.
But I don't know. Like, just a scout or something. Like, they have an analyst that actually plays in the ESEA Advanced with Swedes. So I don't really see the issue here, with a bunch of the players that was in the Fnatic Academy.
Sure. I will also say as well, though, like, this is where I'm always very reluctant to like go too hard one way or the other. Like, at the same time, I agree with you. NIP's obviously the team that's developed all the talent and found the next talents. The problem is there's also sort of like an implication there that they kind of had to do that because nobody who was actually established in Swedish wanted to play for the NIP org. So in a way, I almost feel like it's one of those, like, you know, like the idiom in English is like necessity is the mother of invention. It's like they sort of had to go that route, you know. And if you look how they built around Threat, I mean, if you get Threat, it just makes sense to just say, get whoever you want and you mold them, you know?
Yeah, but they got knocked down Fnatic for some unknown reason.
It's bizarre. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But you also said about Flashpoint having a youth league or a development league. That would be my dream. Like I've talked about with my friends about that. Like if Flashpoint succeeded, like the basic idea, the next thing would be like having a youth development team.
Because my idea would be
sort of draft or something, but that doesn't really work if you have both EU and NA. But if it was all English, you could have a drafting system or something.
Yeah, basically the premise would be, if anyone knows the classic soccer example of like how Manchester United made all those championships, was they started with a really good team that could win the Premier League, but then they have basically introduced all the young players, but gradually, and a whole bunch of them ended up being amazing players and actually became like household names, and they kept winning the Premier League over and over and over and over again. But the point is, if they'd have to really take that guy and he'd played at like a non-existent level and just throw him in a Premier League game, well, I mean, a bunch of them would just sink instantly. You yourself wouldn't know who they are as players. So the problem in that scenario is you need a place where they can play a game that is treated as if it was a real pro match, and you are coached in a similar way, and you have access to the same sort of standards basically that you would have if you were in the main team, so that the guy who's coaching you can actually figure out if you could be in the main team or who you would replace or how you would play, you know. So to me, if you could have a league, well, it's like I say, there's a reason it's separate from all other competition, and there's a reason for people to invest in it. I think it would just be an obvious way to kind of like get the fast track on who's actually good, whereas at the moment, you kind of just gamble. That's why you've seen players in this online era come in and just have 2 or 3 months in a team, then just never play for a top team again. Like, I feel like at the moment, people just gamble. I don't think there's actually much eye test going on. You just hope that the guy's good.
Wasn't a major point of how the players developed in terms of their talent anyway being tested on LAN as well? I mean, obviously, it's still not the ideal circumstance, as you just outlined, where it would be nice if there was like a whole running league that would feed you up into the top level of professional CS. But if you don't even have these amateur LANs to go to, then, I mean, at that point, the entire spectrum of playing Counter-Strike is morphed in some way. It's not completely different, but it's different enough that even that must be a lingering sort of drag on maybe the players, maybe the management. Like, I don't know how this guy's going to perform when we go back to LANs. And that seems to be stretching ever closer as we get closer to the date of the majors. So that must also have some invisible stress, I imagine, on some of these players, that maybe it just manifests in weird ways and they end up flunking out of the top level of play after, like you said, a couple months, that where they get a trial on a top team or whatever the case may be. It just feels really weird to see such a huge turnover, because usually you would see this in other games. Like the turnover I've seen at the highest level of CS when you have people coming in, like I would take Evil Genius's recent roster moves as a couple of examples, and presumably there's another one coming very soon as well. Given the circumstance there, it feels like it's just been a nonstop shuffle for them. And I guess, to a lesser extent, Fnatic bringing in Giacchino and then this new guy as well, like that's another case of roster shuffles happening pretty frequently. That stuff usually doesn't happen in CS. Like, I'm more used to that happening in games like League of Legends, where burnout is more of a factor. But in this case, it's like, I don't think it's the same reasons, but it seems to be happening more frequently in CS now.
I mean, the fact that you don't have to go to the LAN just means you don't ever get that test here. So the problem is, there's a lot of people where if we only had online Counter-Strike, I think a lot more people would have been pros, and there might have been more turnover, as you say. Like, in my opinion, the most undervalued thing in the online era is obviously experience, because it doesn't really count for anything, does it? It's just how good are you in the video game today. There are no external factors. There's almost no intangibles left even. Like, right. I mean, just look at any of the teams. Like, these teams that went to number one, who were the unexpected ones, Big, Heroic, Gambit, they didn't just like gradually go up like everyone else did. They just went straight to number one. It was ridiculous.
Right.
Like, think about it. Even if you really are that good on LAN, like, I mean, I guess eventually you could say Fury is the team that proved it, right? It took them a couple of years. They had to do that one roster move, but whatever. The essential gist of what they did eventually worked out. They don't just instantly go to number one. You have a few results and then people beat you down a bit and then you start to prove it more. And it's like I always say there's a ladder. Now it's more like you just fast track to the top in an elevator or something. So I do think that's a big problem. One thing I might actually do a video soon where it'll be like the ultimate skeptic take on the online era, because here's the problem is, even though I essentially do sort of think you shouldn't have excuses, basically, as in, if I was a pro right now, what I would do every day, I would wake up and I would frame it like this. There is no choice to play on LAN. Nobody knows if or when we will ever play on LAN again. For today and for the foreseeable future, this is the only way I can compete as a pro, which is online Counter-Strike. So I have to pretend that is all that exists, and I have to play however the best way you have to play an online Counter-Strike to succeed. And then beyond that, I have to hope I get the results to remain at the level I'm at. Because in my opinion, if a pro starts thinking about all the negatives, it's probably going to wreck their mentality. But the problem is I'm not a pro, so I can't absolutely be as cynical as I want to be. And the killer for me isn't just all the new turnover of players. It's this factor here. If I had to pick in CSGO history, you probably heard me say this many times before, the most underrated valuable player is the great in-game leader. Because everyone knows you need a star player, right? Everyone knows, obviously, I want to build a team around Simple and Nico and Z. Yeah, everyone gets that part. But a lot of people, even until recently, didn't get the part about the great in-game leader. Like, a lot of people were absolutely only too happy for the Goldens of the world to just come in and instantly take over top teams. Now, in my opinion, that's where LAN is totally different. And that's why, to me, one area of the online play that I can't fuck with is just try it right now. Open up the HLTV top 10. Don't even have to be this month, but you can do it for this month. Do it now, and then maybe even pick a random time in the last 12 months. Just pick a random time in the top 10 and go and look how few great in-game leaders are going to be leading the top 10 teams. You'll be astonished. Now, if you go to any era on LAN, if you have those, like, let's say we picked our top 10 in-game leaders active in the game right now. I'm going to say any period in time, like 8 of those are going to be in the top 10 in the world. Like, that's how pivotal they were when you're on LAN. But for some reason in the online games, I mean, we could speculate if you want, there's a million factors. They just don't, that doesn't seem to be that effective online at the moment. I mean, think about this. We live in a world where, unironically, mouse spots with Dexter is better than phase with Carrigan. but bizarrely, I don't hear anyone telling me Dexter must be a better IGL, but that is what their results would imply, right?
I actually had a friend that had a theory about that. I think he missed the point, but
is it a good one though? Maybe it's worth hearing.
But he had a good analysis at least.
Go on then.
And the conclusion wasn't what I thought. But he said something like, you need a fragging IGL during the online era. And I think his take was that the fragging IGL is the new norm, or it's something necessity.
Okay.
A necessity. You need 5 fragging players.
I can see the angle.
Really, like on online, I might agree with it, but not if we go back to LAN.
No, in terms of online, that's not a bad angle, actually, because obviously that is literally the reason they got Dexter, was that he was basically like the best player and the IGL on Renegades, wasn't he? So, I put it this way, I don't hate that theory, actually, because if you think about, I mean, players like Carrigan are obvious examples. Even his style of play is he's not even trying to get all the frags, is he? He's trying to give all the frags to his star players, basically. Yeah. So, like, I will say, if you ever have a scenario, that is one thing I would say I would define differently about the online era. It feels like everyone frags online. Like, one of the reasons I find it bizarre that everyone's so puzzled, you know, everyone keeps linking that shit on Reddit. Like, look at the way Heroic, they all have similar ratings. It's like, yeah, because all they do is just go on the server and fucking shoot everyone. Like, that's what they do to win the game, isn't it?
It does seem to be a dominant and working strategy in the online era too. And the weirdest thing is, I don't know. I would like to sit down at some point, maybe after this whole thing is over and we return to LAN and we see like maybe a meta shift back towards whatever we were used to, or maybe in a completely different direction, or maybe it doesn't shift at all. But we get a couple months into LAN play. I would like to sit down and compare an online game between two teams that have managed to stay at the top during LAN, like where they were 6 months ago, where they are now, or whatever. That would be interesting just to see what how the tactics have changed, if the tactics have changed, because I do feel like some part of the just go kill strategy is due to the fact that you can wide swing on people and you have that peeker's advantage element. That obviously morphs how you play these specific like 50-50 angles. But I would have expected utility to be able to buttress some of these strategies, especially on the CT side, a little bit more. So I would like to figure out exactly why the go kill strats are finding so much success, when in theory you should be able to adapt to whatever those particular tactics are and the arrangement of the players. It shouldn't be just that because I can, hold W on you or hold A and then D. That shouldn't really be the difference in my head from what I conceptualize Counter-Strike as. But maybe it actually is that much of a game changer that on a mechanical level the game is played at such a different degree. It does feel a little weird though that that would result in so many things. Maybe that is why Carrigan has found limited success in FaZe Clan so far, because obviously his strength isn't necessarily fragging, and he's actually maybe trying to apply strats that would work a little bit more on LAN conditions in terms of gameplay than strats that work online. I'm very curious as to, like, the more this online stuff has been building up and the longer we've been stuck in it, the more excited I am to really see the return to LAN and then how it changes the game specifically, because it does seem a bit weird that we're so far in now and this is the state of top level Counter-Strike, so to speak.
Does anyone else have a take on this angle, or are we swapping?
I got an idea. Something you said about earlier about
All right.
the mentality for LAN compared to online. JT had quite a funny interview when they were in Europe and said, like, Fang, he is so mature. We can really see how good he is, and that we really had a good pick, and he would be great on LAN. And then he went back to NA and had more or less a roller coaster of a form in the next event. So I don't really see, like, how he's mature in LAN event and like his experience. How did JT think that is going to work if he's going to fluctuate online?
One of the problems, if you've noticed with that whole thing, because it's funny, it happened more in League of Legends, because obviously they had less opportunities to play like a big pressure, playoff series because of how their circuit works. But basically, I've noticed, because people take the idea of being a choker as like a character flaw of you, which is it is sort of in a way, but it's also like, it's not as simple as that. Like, you're obviously not just like a bad person or an inferior person because you have this flaw. People, because they make it so like emotionally charged in a way, not only do the players deny it, but they all tend to deny it about their teammates until it's become like abundantly evident. Because what they try to think of in that case is they, like, as you say, they'll use some angle like, well, he's a very mature person, or, he's willing to admit his mistakes, or, he understands he's his own worst critical. Like, none of those actually apply to whether you like fall apart on LAN. Like, as far as I can tell, falling apart on LAN is a whole bunch of other shit. Sometimes shit from your real life. Like, are you a person that gets super nervous? Do you get inside your own head? Is there a precedent of losing to this specific team that you keep thinking about? And, your teammates just don't know it. Like, I actually don't think you can predict whether someone does. That's why I always use the classic idiom of, like, sink or swim. Like, you only really know when you chuck the guy in the water. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter how great it all looks before then, there are some people that just fail in those moments, and it's very difficult to know what it is. Like, what's funny is one thing that might sound counterintuitive, but I've mentioned it a lot in the past with players like Elige, Device. I even think Carrick is an in-game leader, Existence is an in-game leader. They had these issues as in-game leaders even, is sometimes being too cerebral can fuck you up. Because what happens then is you just are entirely in your own head, and it's like you're thinking, right, well, if I did this, and then he would reply with Y, and I could do Z in response, I could go, it's like, mate, some of the best players are just going, do A. Like, they're not even thinking about any of that shit, but like you can actually, like, sort of psych yourself out when you go too deep in some of that stuff. So, like, I think it's very, very difficult to have any clue who will actually make it online. Yeah, you really just have to wait and see. We're swapping to something else.
Yeah, I had another quick topic to discuss specific to the LAN side of things, because one of the things that was brought a little bit to the forefront, I was talking with Swisher over in Bad News Bears, and he was mentioning that the way that there's like a lot of different things that you can do on LAN that obviously you can't do online, like really weird environmental things that we all kind of knew were there. Like, I was aware of some of these things. Some of them were really weird, like, you basically can, if you throw an HE grenade, you can listen for the reverberation of the explosion sound. And if you hear
through
that,
the speakers,
if you hear that, then you know that they were following the grenade. So there's probably a player over there. There's like a bunch of really crazy meta things that you can define there. I wanted to ask, just start a topic, I guess, about, like, to what extent do tournament organizers and event organizers, event planners, so to speak, have a responsibility to try to minimize as much of those externalities as they can? Because, I mean, I guess the first thing you have to establish is whether or not that, like, we even believe as a community, I guess, or even as individuals, do we believe that that's a legitimate usage of the game's mechanics and of the environment that you're in, or is that tantamount to, in a smaller way than what we would normally conceptualize it as, is it tantamount to some element of cheating? And I'm not really comfortable saying that, on a professional stage, you should be able to, like, listen in for something that theoretically you shouldn't have any way to know. and be able to decipher that based on some vibrations or catching a reflection or something like that for a flashbang, any of that stuff. And I do feel like personally, as you know, just thinking about that, it feels wrong that a team would be able to get that advantage. But is it, I guess the truism or the idealist nature of it is like, should that be something that event organizers should try to work around? And then the realistic side is it even possible? Because I guarantee there's a lot more than what people are talking about publicly and what everybody seems to know on like an intrinsic level. There's a lot more, many more exploits than people have discussed that maybe the event organizers themselves aren't even aware of. And maybe there's a lot of these that can't even be, taken care of. So how much of an impact do you guys think that the fact that you can use your environment in that way to metagame some information, how much of an impact does that make on LAN play? Like, does it delegitimize it in some ways? Is that offset by it being on stage and you hearing the crowd and all that stuff? Because obviously there are a lot of differences between online and on-LAN play, but the elements that sap at it, I feel like, are the ones that are, in theory, unintended.
Right, part of the problem you're basically going to run into with that topic, it's like if you tried to have this discussion of the concept of a European Super League in soccer, you'll never ever get to the topic, mate. It'll just be people fucking like emotionally reacting to the word that conjures up an image in their mind. They'll never get to the topic and the principle in question. So the problem here is the reason why this never actually gets to the point of like, what could we do to change it? Should the environment be like that? What advantages does it confer? Is that too much? Like, would that actually ruin the competitive integrity of the game? In the case of, as you know, the flashbang one, the obvious one is the crowd shouting. Like, hence why, like, that Astralis example when they were at Pro League all those years ago was outrageous, where they basically like told essentially like there was going to be a boost and then the crowd just shouted, What the problem with that topic is, there's two immediate problems you run into. One, all real life sports can't control these environments. So every pleb fan's going to go, but in real sports, it's part of the game, the crowd can shout at you. It's like, great, well, that's brilliant. So because of real sports, I guess we should do it then. Yeah, case closed, end of story, fuck all discussions, right? And then the other one is, it's kind of alluding to that, which is even the pro players in esports, especially the European ones, sadly, they are living out some LARP fantasy of being a sports star. So they will just straight up tell you, they've said this publicly, people like Kenny S, Get Right, they've all said this publicly, is they don't care even if it is something that affects the competitive integrity of the game. They say they like to play when there's a crowd and you can hear the crowd and you can react to the crowd and you can feed off the crowd and all. Well, the problem with that is they are inherently saying, I want a sound leak in my setup. Yeah. Well, if someone's starting at that position, you're going to have a hard time discussing any other aspect there, because what they're basically saying is the thing I enjoy the most about the game is hearing the roar of the crowd. So it doesn't matter how many great points we make about like how it would set it up. In terms of whether it's possible, it is definitely possible. One of the problems with this topic as well is you have people on Reddit, and people on Reddit just repeat things that they saw that seemed smart, that they saw other people say on Reddit, because they know they got upvoted last time, might get upvoted this time. So what essentially Reddit is that shit meme of that guy like, you made this, I made it. That's just all Reddit is. And so hence why even the jokes are the same jokes. Like years later, it's people going, tits or ass, ha ha. Like, oh, great one, mate. You're the first one to think that one up. But the problem in that case is, right, anyone who knows the topic we're talking about now, so the obvious example that tends to come up is like when the crowd ruins a moment, like a clutch or a sneak, a flank or something. Anytime that topic comes up, right, people instantly on Reddit jump into the thread and go, well, actually, you can't have proper like booth setups because of fire and safety things. Like they just like quote things they sort of remember MLG Adams saying about 7 years ago, right? Well, the problem with that is like, again, there's loads of nuance there. Like as far as I can tell, there are setups you can have. Booth setups, stage setups, studio setups. There are setups you can have that are close to like minimal, let's just say negligible amount of like sound where it wouldn't affect these instances, for example. The problem becomes things like, well, the costs. Are you an event that transports your stage and therefore has to keep setting it up and putting it together? Do you have a permanent location? Like a lot of the Korean booths, for example, that booth will just be stood there for 10 years, mate. It's not moving anywhere. You set it up once and it works, There's basically, it's like a it's like any topic that involves a field that isn't just about esports. So like finances, fucking, let me think what else, legislation, legal aspects. Like, yeah, you really can't like need a person from that area who's an expert. So I have to say, this is a topic I might do a show about one day, but I'd have to get in basically like the people who like set up the stages for ESL when they do a road show, someone from Korea who's just done one studio show in one studio for 5 years, maybe a sports person who's had similar experience between the two. Like, I feel like it is a super interesting topic, but I kind of outlined there why the discussion sort of gets like derailed or short-circuited every time it comes up,
Yeah. Yeah, another element that people always I've seen as like the social media response, the NPC responses, but if we have soundproof booths, then we won't be able to interact with players, and that will be bad.
Yeah, it's kind of the fan version of the player complaint, right? Yeah, exactly. Of like, I'll be shouting, but the player can't hear me. That's why, essentially, like I say, what you really have to do is you have to start where you tried to start, which is like, what would essentially, it's like I say about formats. The reason why, in my opinion, Flashpoint I know it didn't ever use the format I wanted, but it had in theory better formats than many other tournaments that you've seen in the past to CSGO. It's because me and Monty would sit down and I would say, what are we selecting for? And if what we were selecting for was we want to have the best final possible, right, we better have a super sturdy format that makes underdogs not win easily. Then how do we set up the bracket? Right, well, I wouldn't want a bracket that was affected by a lot of best of ones because that could fuck up that, right? So we better have best of three. So basically, you ask what you're selecting for. So I would say the same thing. What you need to ask here, which is, and after I say this, I want to open it up and get everyone's thoughts, is do you want a world where it is like sports, like environment and terrain is part of the equation, like a certain type of a stadium, I might really hear fans better than the others, and some of them maybe I won't, and therefore a studio event will have different winners? Or do you want a world where it's essentially like an online game, except there is a crowd, but you just don't hear them or interact with them? Like, I want to know what people's thoughts are, because I don't think there's an invalid opinion, basically. I just actually would wonder what other people want. What do they think? Because I'm a purist, if people haven't noticed. On almost every topic, I just want whatever makes for the best match,
Going back in League of Legends history, I remember this being an issue around Season 2 Worlds. There was in group stages TSM versus Zubu Frost, I think. And TSM fans had accused Zubu Frost of cheating because one of the players was glancing over at the large...
yes, it was quarterfinals, but I know the one you're on about.
Or quarterfinals, yeah. So there was that whole thing. And then I think afterwards... Riot just always had like straight horizontal rather than
they tried to change it so you couldn't see, basically. Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
And then there was a lot of a discussion at the time, like you were saying, a lot of the sound booths, no sound booths, and then
there's a similar one the next year actually for the TSM fans again because they're the worst fans. Mm-hmm. TSM played against the Chinese team OMG, and the TSM fans, no joke, just shouted out when there was a gank coming to top lane to Gyros. They just shouted like, "It's ganking, yes, ganking!" And then they obviously just knew the champion was coming top lane. So like, there's an example of where like what's the Chinese player supposed to do? Just never go for a gank. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's obvious examples. Yeah, where were you going with that?
I was going to say then they took it to the studio and they had a similar problem in the studio where there was a banner separating the two teams and teams were complaining that they could hear people like behind them talking. Yes. And then, so it seems like it also depends with each game. So it seems adaptive. Like if there's an esports like Smash, everyone's getting the same input and stimuli.
Yeah, it's basically about like essentially what you're alluding to is just as in Counter-Strike, I don't know where all the opponents are. I only know based on the radar and what we've all communicated. Obviously in League they have fog of war. Yeah, basically it depends what type of game it is, right? Because as you say, on Smash Brothers, all the information is on the screen at all times, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas I guess the analogy here, if you could look at the screen, is it's like the reason why we all know that it wasn't actually as fun as we all remember to play GoldenEye, because the other fucker's just looking out the corner of his eye and seeing where you are on the map, isn't he? Like, right. We'd all have to pretend he's running around just doing whatever, but if they're really good, you can never beat them, can you? Because they're just always behind you with fucking odd job or whatever.
Now, I wonder how much momentum and being on, like, a stage performing really takes into account to some of this, because, obviously, like you said, some players are younger, some players have dealt with that through like, public school band or like sports, like things of that nature. So, that can come into effect too, right? So I don't have too much more to add on this though, unfortunately.
What does everyone else think? What do you think on this one, Lagge?
I'm a bit conflicted because I'm quite a purist like you. I want the best competition and the most fair winner of a tournament and event. But at the same time, what's the point if it's not entertainment as well? It depends on like what level we're talking about, but on the top level, it's part of the entertainment that you can talk to each other, you can interact with the crowd and stuff like that. So I'm a bit conflicted in my own thoughts about it.
Because like I say, I don't really think there's necessarily like a right or a wrong answer. Like what's funny is, this is where I notice other people. One of the flaws I've noticed about a lot of people is a lot of people don't actually enjoy thinking. Like, even if they sort of get your idea, they just think about your idea only on the level and in the exact way you were mentioning your idea. And somehow they don't like get, that doesn't spur a thought of their own to continue on, or they don't like sort of like, do like a dry run of where the logic could go if they, you know, expanded it and progressed it a few steps on. So I'll give you an example of where this should actually have been a big discussion. So, you know, on Pronogo's show, where his co-host Vu made the point that, like, one of the reasons why that Acadian clutch was already mad overrated is it could just never have happened on LAN. Like, in no universe would it be possible that, especially by the way, if it had been in Eastern Europe, like, there's no universe the crowd would be saying nothing as you just snuck behind them all the way through the fucking, like, the window room, right? So the problem in that scenario is, what I don't get this, right, is that was given as a diss against Cadian's clutch not being that good, right? Which I agree, it isn't. It's why it's way harder to do clutch on LAN. But what nobody bothered mentioning is, I think that actually kind of sucks that couldn't happen on LAN. Like, I've never liked that factor. I've never liked knowing some of the things that Pronogo's talking about. That, like, actually sometimes pros know little tricks about, like, a specific stadium setup, or they know little, like, environmental details like this, where it's actually not as cool that they won that round. Like, you know what? They didn't have, like, if you know the StarCraft example, in StarCraft Brood War, right? When players would make these godlike moves that made no logical, like, objective sense, like just randomly moving a unit to just go and scout an area that, you know, they very rarely ever go to, but you would do it, and then you would just accidentally catch, like, the guy, like a Protoss player about to proxy a fucking, like, your base, basically, like, and you would win the game off it. It was called Star Sense, right? Because the idea was, that really is like the fucking, like, the universe just reaching out to your intuitive mind, like, just track this randomly, and you just do it because you're a genius, right? It's not as cool if you actually knew that there was some, like, little thing like, but I spotted this thing earlier, like, flash across the peripheral vision on the screen. I thought, you know, it might be that mineral down there, so I'll just go check. Like, that's not as cool anymore, is it? Like, it's not, you know, it does kind of suck the, like, epic nature out of that moment. So, unfortunately, it's those factors that, like, when you know those things, it does kind of, like, ruin a little bit about what makes the game awesome, in my opinion. But at the same time, I also do, this is why I'm torn. If you took it out entirely, like, let's imagine a world where, because essentially, as I said, forget, like, them helping you. What you're saying is you have to remove all sound leak if you want to get rid of these, like, the clutch example, right? Yeah. I'll tell you what, the day you remove that, it'll be a lot more like this online era now. There'll be a lot of players who'll be able to go to LAN, essentially sit in a booth where they're locked off from everyone except their teammates, and they won't feel the pressure of the crowd. Because in this case, to avoid the grenades that Pronogo talked about, we can't have any vibration. To avoid, like, seeing things, they can't have access to any part of a screen. Well, in that scenario, I think you'd have a lot more players could play kind of a bit free and loose, you know. Part of what intimidates the young player is hearing that fucking crowd, is hearing the vibration, like, fucking hell, this isn't like playing at home, being in, like, a different set. Like, some of that would actually be gone. So that's why I say I'm torn, because even as a purist, it actually might make the level of play not as good, in as much as, you know, people wouldn't be... Like, at the moment, one thing I love about LAN Counter-Strike is it's really fucking hard to be amazing in a big final. Like, one of the whole reasons why I think I've won everyone over to the idea Simple's the best player ever, it's because he just does it every fucking game. Like, pick out any player you guys like, Coldzera, Olaf Meister, get right. Even they had years where they just have a tournament where, you know, they played mega in the group stage and then just played all right in the semi-final, you know, like, they're just humans.
Sure. One of the things that gets me about the topic in general is that, like you're saying, the Acadian clutch could never happen on LAN, and it's largely because of external interference, right? So, like, what would be really nice is if somehow you could like, mute the crowd during the round and only, like, unmute them for the players, like, after the round is over or something. Maybe then you would still get some of the best of both worlds, so to speak. You would still lose out on the feeling of the crowd impacting the player in the moment. But if they get that on the walkout and they get the crowd yelling at them, right, or yelling around them, so to speak, and everybody's hyped and they're like, holy shit, I'm about to play on LAN. This is the big leagues. And then they get in and round starts, crowd goes silent. In some ways, that might even be more intimidating, depending on who you are. And then it comes back after the round is over. You know, there's things that you could theoretically do to try to marry these two concepts, but it does seem quite difficult to get a good balance. It's just that for me, using the Acadian clutch as an example, another thing about that clutch is that it's not just about sound leak for the players using it. It's also that like they have these noise canceling earphones in that stop them from being able to hear really subtle things like footsteps, which in those cases like can actually reduce the level of play on LAN, depending on the circumstance you might be seeing. Because if I would hear that while I'm sitting at home as a player, then it seems a little weird that I wouldn't be able to hear a sound because of something else. Like there's a distinct sound that you get made when you get hit, tagged through a wall. And that's what informed Katie, or according to his comms after the fact, he said that he heard when he was tagging somebody through triple, and then he heard somebody start to jump, which also seems a bit RNG in CS whether or not it makes a sound. But if you would never hear that on LAN as well. So even if the crowd wasn't, active and informing people of the fact that he was about to knife somebody, even if that didn't feed into it, it's unlikely he would have even gotten the information necessary for him to make that. And that's its own conversation, I guess, or subtopic is like,
I'll give you some trivia. Here's a little piece of trivia for you, because obviously the problem in this scenario is we're also presenting it as though it's been the same setup forever on LAN and online, right? Whereas obviously that's changed. Like obviously the more stadium events you have, the more like the even factors, by the way, like the way the observers work now changes this. Because for example, an observer observes for the stream. He doesn't observe for the people in the audience. I mean, technically you could actually cut half these things out by just not showing the guy doing a sick boost secretly, because then the crowd wouldn't applaud, but you'd have to specifically observe for that crowd or have a different observer for the stadium than the stream, so there'd be problems with it anyway, and the casters would have to also be aware of the crowd instead of the stream. So there's a million factors that make it like very tricky to actually change that. But I'll just give people some trivia that this isn't the first time there's been an issue with Counter-Strike. If you go back, it was actually during, funnily enough, the prime of when Lurpus was a player in like the mid 2000s, was when basically a lot of tournaments were held at game shows like E3, all those sorts of events, CBIT, etc. And a lot of them would be held where you weren't like in a totally separate area. You were like playing your games, and literally like 15 meters behind you, there might be a booth for some like, I don't know, a graphics card that might have super loud music playing. So whoever the team that's closest to them might have music playing behind them, whereas the other one might have nothing playing behind them. So what would happen was in this era, sound quality was terrible. Like it was basically always too loud. So for example, things like footsteps, you couldn't hear them as well. So people would do a lot more rushes than you would on a game where you could hear perfectly and you could hear every footstep. 1.6 had amazing actual audio for being able to hear it all over the map. But in these LAN settings, you wouldn't hear that. Similarly, it was the era when the manufacturers would only give you like their newest screens. And at the time, flat screen monitors were dog shit. They were way worse than CRT. Like a CRT could be like 120 hertz, where like the flat screen monitor might be like 60 hertz. So even though it was a way worse monitor, you had to use it because it was a way to show off the new tech, right? Well, those monitors famously, I think off the top of my head, it was flashbangs or something, just seemed to last way longer on them than it did on like the CRT. I'm not sure why that is. I'm not a tech guy. But anyway, if you added all these things together, basically what I was told by some of the pros in this era was that like, even though when you watch, because remember back then you weren't even watching a stream, you were just watching the demo. You would watch the demo and you might make all sorts of assumptions that would actually be wrong. Like this guy couldn't hear that footstep, or this guy was flashed like twice as long as you thought he was. And so in a way that kind of actually fucks with the competitive integrity of the game, because you wouldn't know any of that watching the demo. You could never actually get that information unless you heard from me now or you were there at the time, You can't factor it in, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons why, if possible, I just kind of wish we had the same environment at all times.
Yeah, that would be the ultimate way of testing consistency over a long period of time. And I guess that just thinking about this topic actively and, thinking down to all of the different cases down the years will show you how far we are from that, where CS is still probably the best game for, like, I guess maybe second to some of the older games out there, like obviously Brood War, where it actually didn't change and it was only maps.
It's the closest you can get at this point, let's be real. Like, you're not going to get anything closer. The only thing is, though, that's why on that topic, it is a very conflicting one for me, because essentially I am willing to sacrifice a few things, like the odd moment in the game, for the fact that it's a lot harder on rookies. Because I know it sounds mad, but the more that time... I used to actually look back, and then when I saw people like Device Choke, I used to think, this just sucks, doesn't it? Because he's actually way better than people know, but he just can't show it. And then when I realised there's actually like a beauty in that, because that becomes like an extra threshold that the best players ever must get through. And if you can't get through that, that is a way to show that maybe you weren't the absolute best player ever. Which is like, it's another reason why. But in my opinion, it's actually an important one. And it's also, I think, another cool element is, especially in esports games, people are so horny to get the new 17-year-old kid who's got really good mechanics. Well, in a world where we don't have these extra like intangible or environmental aspects, it does actually mean that too many people will just get in the young rookie instead of like understanding what like the old veteran can bring. And so in my opinion, the thing that the old veterans always have is these qualities, because that's what made them get to the top in the first place. They had to be comfortable in a pressure match. They had to be able to play from behind. They had to play when the sound setup isn't perfect, or they had to know these little like sort of veteran moves of like, you can do this little trick here, or he's not going to know about this because he hasn't played a big LAN yet. Like, in a way, I actually think those factors are important because they sort of keep the hierarchy of the game in place. They make it less of a free-for-all. And it's also the only way we can sort of bring that factor from sports into esports, as it were, Because if anyone ever watches any real sport, especially the 1v1 sports where it's more extreme, like, it's not a joke. Like, it is very, very rare that players who have like any nerve issues could ever make like a Grand Slam final in tennis. Like, because you have to win so many big pressure matches, stage matches, the finals can be so different. Like, you just don't get flukes in the same way as you do in certain like esports games where you are just playing a video game,
One of the things that made me think back to a really old concept I had come up with years ago. You mentioned earlier, should different tournaments have almost serving like different tennis courts, right? Like this tournament will carry sound differently, or this tournament will have different screen setup or whatever, crazy stuff like that. I had this idea a while back where it would be like everybody in individual booths, like every player in their own booth, and their whole screen would go black and they would be able to talk to their teammates after death. And I thought that would be like a fun exposition match type shit if you wanted to do like some crazy show match. The problem is it is more suited to like epic narrative storyline or whatever. Like, was he able to instinctively know like, oh, his buddy was right here and then he died? It would probably not work out. Like, the players would probably hate actually playing with that setup, I imagine. Just because it would actually be more suited for tension and less suited for the fun show match angle. But it made me think of like, there's probably a bunch of ways that tournament organizers could even lean into these sort of imbalances or changes in the ability for pros to gather a metagame or metagame information rather.
I think that would be good, mate. Like, Two things I hate about Counter-Strike is the fact that, we don't have it as much now in Pro CS, but especially when like the death cam was ridiculously long, like that combined with your teammates being able to talk, and then now even the radar shit where you see on your radar when they see someone, you're just making the game for lurkers and really sick clutch players not as impressive. You're just fucking ruining the game. Like, basically, you just get a competitive leg up on me, even though I'm better than you at the game in that scenario. Whereas, as you're saying, if you like, if all the players on my team, their comms get cut off from me, and I'm some lurker and some 1v3 who pulls it, I did it all. It has to be. It couldn't be anything else, could it?
And that's why I said it's like more suited for that tension and like imagine a LAN final being played in that setup or something would actually be pretty nice to see how that.
By the way, just as an amusing aside, basically that's how actually American Counter-Strike used to be played back in 1.6. They used to have rules which were no ghosting rules. So when you died, it would go instantly to fade to black. And the rule was you weren't allowed to talk. But the problem was it's a very hard rule to enforce because since these were American events, what would happen was if you were Swedish or German, basically any non-English language, because there's no way the admin speaks your language, they were just super slick. So even though these, by the way, this is why I know, by the way, that whole thing of like, but a great player would never cheat. They're most incentivized to cheat, you daft fuck. The question is like, because think about it, some of those people, when they tell you I'll do anything to win, they mean it, by the way. They just don't think they can get away with it in current CS. So what they used to do, some of the people who won the events, by the way, was they just figured out, well, everyone can technically talk very briefly when they die if they're just cursing themselves, right? So obviously if an American player just bashes this, like, oh, fuck, I can't believe I missed. Like, the admin's not going to disqualify for you that because he's going to think, well, you didn't give anything. So what these guys would do was the German or Swedish player would pretend he was just cursing, but secretly he was actually saying, like, 3 going B now, fuck, 1 going in tunnel, but he would just say it in German or something, and then the admin guy would be going like, and obviously I have no clue what this guy's saying. So essentially it became unenforceable unless you spoke English, So it was only, the irony was Americans wanted that rule, but it only worked for Americans.
That is pretty hilarious because of course.
Because they used to actually call it ghosting, believe it or not. They thought if you talked while you were dead, it was ghosting and you were sort of cheating, which you are if it's the rule. But obviously it's just like in European Counter-Strike, that was just always the way it was allowed,
Well, you would have to somehow have that rule set be reflected in whatever the matchmaking of the day was, right? So, like, I'm thinking like CEVO or whatever, and then obviously now it would be FACEIT and ESEA and stuff. Like, basically, whatever the pros were doing. I mean, that is another weird thing, is that I've noticed that some tournaments have different times. Maybe this is all eradicated now, but maybe like 2 years ago or so, tournaments had different rules for how long the time between match restart or round restarts were. So you could like theoretically hunt for a weapon for longer if or go for an exit kill or a kill after time or something for longer, depending on the tournament you were at. I think the old FACEIT matches had a different setup than maybe some of the ESEA.
I imagine it was just at the discretion of whoever the admin was. They just picked whoever they preferred. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that's another setup for like making your tournament seem somewhat distinct. But if, one of the things that I do remember is a lot of players complaining that there was that disparity, or if they just liked one better, they'd be like, can everybody just change it to this or whatever? So, which is classic player, obviously. But what
annoys me is the obvious version for me of what you were saying about having like a tennis court season where you have the clay court season and then the grass and then you go back to the hard court. Yeah. The obvious way to do it to me, this shows why actually sometimes I hate trying to change things in Counter-Strike, because when you change them, they just change it the wrong way. So obviously I pushed for years to get double elimination into the game, and now every fucking tournament has to be double elimination. And then obviously I wanted the really important tournaments to be all best of three. Now every tournament's all best of three. It's like, no matter what you ask for, they'll always fuck it up in the execution. Because to me, the obvious way it should have gone would be like this. ESL maybe, like, I'll give them credit, at least they did design that unique system when we had the LANs where it was like groups that were double elim and then it went into a single elim playoffs. So it's like, okay, that's a unique setup, I like that. But then they just did it on too many events. They did it on like, I don't know, fucking 8 events in a year or something. What I would have liked is if each tournament circuit kind of had its own flavour. So for example, maybe, let's pick one at random, maybe Blast likes the old school round robin into a single elim bracket. Cool, then let them be that. Then maybe ESL wants to do this double elim thing. Maybe Flashpoint only does a double elim bracket entirely and there's no groups. Whatever way. Because the reason why I think that would be cool, in my opinion, is if you followed any esports games that had mixed formats. Dota 2 was famously like this. Some tournaments were double elim. Some were single. Some were round robin group stage. Some were GSL. Obviously, I know fighting games have had this. One of the cool things about different format tournaments is you do get different winners and you get people who become specialists in a way, not like on purpose, but the classic example I always bring up is Evil Geniuses in Dota in like the mid 2010s were always the lower bracket team, probably because they just, had to play you twice to figure out the draft or something. But like, I think it's kind of cool because to tie it into the tennis example, it would be like that. You would get people who would be favoured on certain formats over certain other ones, I mean, the obvious example would have been if every tournament had double elim when Astralis was playing, and a lot of them did. There's a reason why they were like almost impossible to beat before top 4. If they'd have been in some of those old school best of one round robins in a single elim, they'd have had a whole bunch of tournaments. They would have just gone out in the group stage or, lost quarterfinal or something.
I want to actually build on that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Like, since ESL had the best teams in the world signed as partners,
yes,
I think it was 13 out of the best 20 or something. I'm not sure.
No, it makes sense.
But now most of them have dropped quite severely. If I remember, I'm not even sure about it.
No, you're right. I think I know where you're going with this, though. Keep going.
So if they want to like isolate and be the driving force instead of collaborating with Blast as they do right now, and more or less just took up 100% of the next year, why not just change the rule set and change the settings of their own events so that the partnership teams feel disadvantaged when they go to other events and might turn them down?
So basically push for like soft exclusivity, but in a way where, like, as you say, exactly. You just make it so that like you could still do Blast, but if you do, it'll probably like fuck up your qualification for one of mine, or you might have to skip one. Basically make them make a hard choice. Kind of like what Flashpoint and ESL did to each other with Pro League and Flashpoint, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you can go even further. Like, if nobody likes to play Ancient, why should ESL keep the Ancient in the map pool? They can do their own map pool, right?
I'm not sure for that, because if I had to guess, I think you actually could choose to not include the map. It's just that, again, this is where even people like me are coming up with like NPC remarks. We're having to go off things we've heard. But I would suspect, based on how things used to be back in like the mid-2010s when everyone was bidding for the majors, I know back then the reason why people used to mirror what Valve did is because they sort of thought, you have to kiss Valve's ass and pretend that they are right on everything. And so you kind of you follow their lead. That's why you get people banned that they were banned. So essentially, like, I kind of agree with you. I think that the game's big enough now where if you're ESL, yeah, you could make all these bold moves. I just wonder, like the problem ESL has is the product they put on the server and on the stream is a lot better than their actual like business product, in my opinion, as in the people who make the decisions at the top of the company, they are exactly as you'd sadly believe. Like, they're super OG people from esports who are boomers and have mad out-of-date ideas, and some of them don't even understand some of the concepts about like what the modern gamer's like, etc. Like, there are some of those elements there, so I don't necessarily they don't know that they would do it themselves. Like, if you haven't noticed, with no exaggeration, I actually think I am almost personally responsible for a lot of the upgrades the ESL has made. Because I noticed a lot of the format stuff I asked for when I was a journalist, they just used to do. Now, I don't know if they cynically did it because they thought fans were fucking with my perspective and it was right. I would hope they just watched the video and thought I made a good point, you know. And then in terms of some of the content stuff now, they obviously just copied what I did at Flashpoint, didn't they? So, like, the problem with that, as I'm bringing up, is I don't think that ESL are kind of like thought leaders. I think if they see something that they think works or makes sense, they might copy it, but I don't know how much they introduce. But I get your premise, though. I agree. Like, as mad as it sounds, I wouldn't put it this way, if ESL weren't dickheads, I wouldn't have a problem with someone having a monopoly in Counter-Strike if you did it the best way possible, you know? If you just had an awesome circuit with no problems. Like, no one watches Formula 1 and goes, it sucks that there's no rival one. It's like, no, it's awesome, isn't it? You know, what's not to like?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Is I actually believe that as far as like game developers or tournament organizers or whatever, or just probably in life in general, the idealist probably has to come from a benevolent dictator, but you're never going to get that, especially when there's like this kind of money on the line, so to speak.
Unfortunately, the kind of person who would make themselves a dictator is never the person you want to be the benevolent dictator.
Yeah. You almost have to elect somebody into it, at which point, it's not even really the same thing, I guess. But you have to find somebody whose heart is in the right place and who has the confidence to lead in that sense. Which, you're not really going to get that, especially from companies or corporations, let alone individuals. That's
also one of the reasons, as an aside, I'll also throw in, by the way, Lagger, is as far as I know at the moment, as you will know from watching any of that content that I did about Flashpoint, about how the teams claim that the revenue isn't enough from the tournament organisers, at the moment, that is like a major focus for the team orgs. Like, one of the reasons, in my opinion, why they want to be in ESL and Blast is because you get money from both. Like, Blast, apparently, it sounds like you're making a nice money from being a partner team with them. So, like, that's one of the reasons why I say, like, one of the things that made me realise Flashpoint could never work was even when I was told by the Flashpoint people, right, fuck it then, if the teams aren't going to get the players, just do a big tournament how you want to do it. Get all the best teams. We couldn't get the best teams. They needed us to pay them as well. It didn't matter, their players were going to play in a tournament with $500,000, blah, blah, blah. No, they wanted to get a fee on top of that. So unfortunately, right now, I actually suspect the ESL just couldn't like sort of make the fee high enough on their end to like make it so that people would just only play their event and not Blast as well. I suspect that's probably the bottleneck on that one. Because if you haven't noticed, ESL also, they're basically at the brink financially as far as I know. So I don't really know that they've got much sort of wiggle room on that one. So it depends if we're talking like literally or like conceptually what they could do, In fact, I'll even tell you a little detail. That's even one of the things that I was discussing with like the head guy of Flashpoint. It's not someone you know. You'll never get to know the name of this person because it just never worked out. So it was never publicly said, so I won't say. But basically, this individual, I was even in favour of super bold moves like this. Like, we were one time spitballing an idea where it was like, why don't we go to Blast and say to Blast, why don't we make a Flashpoint Blast circuit where, it's exclusive in the sense that, not exclusive like we keep people out, which is what Valve doesn't want, but it's exclusive in the sense of like, we'll just go head-to-head scheduling with all the ESL events and people can pick. And if ESL wins, they can have the fucking scene. And if they don't, then maybe we can actually save it. Like, I was in favour of like extreme moves like that. The problem is, most people in the scene aren't. Most people just don't want to rock the boat. They just want to keep things how they are, roughly, and improve 1% if they can. Whereas to me, like Counter-Strike especially, it's like, you need to just go for the win at this point in time. Like, if everyone's losing money, then fuck it. Why doesn't one person just go for broke and try and become the one who makes all the money? What are we doing now? We keep going on this topic? Does anyone else have an angle?
I think we discussed it pretty well.
Right, Eddie, do you have a topic, mate? 'Cause you've been a bit quiet on this one. So is there something we can talk about that can interest you?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing me back in. I guess currently there's a Valorant major going on. It's one of the first majors for Valorant with a return to LAN. I think League of Legends also just had MSI in Iceland. Yes. Do you foresee a lot of events this year being in one or two primary locations, like in Iceland or something like that, until COVID has totally passed? What are your expectations with a return to normalcy in most esports?
Yeah, that's the tough part. Like the part I think a lot of people aren't factoring in is it's actually irrelevant whether someone announces a LAN like ESL has, for example, because really what's going to affect whether you can do the LAN is all the travel conditions that people have. So, for example, the fact that people aren't thinking about is even if I could hold a LAN, and let's say within Europe I could have a bunch of teams fly there. Well, if in my particular game, so in a game like Valorant, for example, I heard like some of the Korean teams did this shit or whatever. Well, let's imagine it was a place I'm holding the LAN where the Korean teams can't go, or Americans can't go, or Chinese people can't go. Well, immediately you've almost invalidated the principle of the tournament there if that's like a major player in the game. So the problem I have is like even if you have the LAN, it's going to suck if like a major country can't go. Because in League of Legends, for example, it was only basically people from Vietnam couldn't go, and they're not the best region, obviously. So it wasn't like it didn't like ruin the whole competitive integrity of the game. But if that had been like, you know, Koreans couldn't go, well, yeah, that would absolutely invalidate the game in history, having that tournament. Like people could always say what would have happened if Team X had gone. So I think that's a massive consideration, is basically you're not going to have the proper LANs that you're thinking of until everyone can just freely travel. So I don't know when that comes about. I do think, as you're saying, if somewhere like Iceland sort of works out, I imagine some people also might try that and like just think, right, this has worked the last couple of events, maybe we can hold a small event. The interesting one to me is everyone apparently just pretended like they were just fine with, on the one hand, fear-mongering every aspect of what was happening last year for everywhere else in the world, but when they held the World Championship in League of Legends in China, just pretending there was no issue whatsoever, and magically, let's just never bring the topic up. Because as far as I know, I don't think you can actually even do the same thing in China again this year. Like, didn't they make it in China? I don't want to speak out my arse, but I think they actually have some sort of like, we won't mention the specifics, but a very specific type of restriction for if you can even now enter China. So I don't even know actually if you could run worlds that you did from League of Legends. So I have my suspicions that it will be more like the odd LAN, maybe as you're saying, in like a location where it's worked. But I don't really know if we're going to go back to like a normal LAN in terms of how you thought of, let's say, like 15 months ago. I think it might still be a year or two before we get the proper ones. Because as I say, it will kind of cripple the premise of the LAN if certain countries or regions can't attend.
Do you think it would be interesting to start seeing localized tournaments and scenes to try and rev up the LAN scene again to maybe develop?
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Like, put it this way, let's say someone listen to what I just said now and specifically reverse engineered a tournament they could do. So you could obviously hold like an invitational, couldn't you? And if you said, right, well, only teams from Europe can attend, right, it's an European invitational then. I'm going to invite these 6 teams and I'm going to set up a tournament that'll work. Like, that would still be cool. Like, obviously, the more LANs, the better, right?
Right.
And it's a pretty good compromise as well. Like, people know it wasn't like, you know, we didn't exclude the third best team. They just couldn't travel here, so we had to invite someone else.
Right. Like, I expect at some point this year there being either like some sort of Texas LAN or Florida LAN here in the States for, you know, whatever esports.
I'm actually surprised there hasn't been one announced already, mate. When, bear in mind, they opened up. Yeah.
Right.
I'm surprised someone, I mean, here's the thing. I'm actually not surprised. Like, obviously, logically, someone actually could have had a Florida LAN the entire time last year. It's just that the dreaded word, which now sadly dominates everything in the fucking world of optics, that is what would kill it, wouldn't it? Because obviously no sponsor wants to be associated with the bad press. Obviously, all the fucking players would get abuse if they attended. Like, unfortunately, in that case, that's probably not even logistics. It's just about how it looks to the public, and it's a PR issue, basically.
Right.
And that probably would have been what would have killed that as an idea. Because, yeah, you could technically have done it, of course. Yeah. As they indeed did with the NBA, etc. So, does anyone else have a thought on this topic? What does anyone else think? Like, I haven't been following the Valorant LAN, for example. Do you think they'll do a whole bunch more? Do you think they'll keep doing them in Iceland?
Well, Riot does love the, like you said earlier, the optics. So if they can say, look at us, we've got LANs over here. And they have been attempting to pull from CS for this whole time. I wouldn't be surprised if Riot continues to try to push that. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised that people haven't already attempted to do this in more other esports. in general, and I guess just more sporting events in general. It has been quite a while. I guess maybe it's just a matter of logistics. There's obviously a lot of people who don't feel comfortable going out unless herd immunity has been achieved or whatever. And then I think a large portion of that, I mean, that transcends esports specifically, but a lot of people have just not been, they've either been uninformed or rather, sorry, they've either been misled or just underinformed by whoever is supposedly calling the shots, be their local news media or their local government or whatever, about what the actual path to opening everything back up is. I think I've seen some roadmaps from a couple of my friends in the UK and a couple of my friends in some of the Central European countries about like, this is what our government says we're going to be doing or whatever. But for the most part, it still seems like this theoretically we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we have no idea how long the rest of this tunnel actually is in a lot of places in the world. So maybe it's just a matter of uncertainty, and then that obviously has that little gold rush effect where whatever is still open, like in Iceland or something, well, those places are going to be
the prime spot, of course. Yes.
Yeah, like everybody's going to be trying to go over there. So that's going to add that scarcity effect, and then you're probably never going to get, unless you are a big player like Riot theoretically is. Maybe ESL would be able to do some. I guess they still have plans for the first proper LAN back to the event. But
if people don't know, as far as I know, last year, until quite late, I think we're talking until maybe towards the end of autumn, like Sweden, for example, was completely open. Like, in theory, as long as you could have actually travelled, I mean, you would have had quarantines, but in theory, you could have had a LAN in Sweden, I think, like in the summer last year or something. The problem is, here's probably a better way to explain what I was saying earlier. Essentially, if you're in Europe, you're actually still, like, in American culture in terms of how, like, the internet is, works and how, like, people will talk about you in media and, the kind of, like, let's say, I would say societal norms, but they're not really societal, are they? Like, they're fucking enforced from the top down using, like, nonsense fucking political causes. But yeah, basically, the way the optics work, you're basically in an American filter. So sadly, I think actually that was never on the table just because you just have to cater to what people cared about in the American online sphere. You can only really do that if you're from those Asian regions which just don't give a fuck. Like, China is China, Korea is Korea, they do what they want,
Well, that's kind of the same thing as, like, I think this was actually on the same show many, many episodes ago, but you obviously brought up earlier the whole Academy roster side of things in CS specifically. And I always thought it was so weird that, like, Valve obviously had theoretically legislated there shouldn't be Academy teams, but then obviously all of the CIS squads had Academy teams and had been for years, and there was no word from Valve. And that I think your point to that was something to the effect of developers think that they can play God, and then the Russians say no or whatever. Some extrapolation of that, where like at some point there's going to be people who have more power than you or who simply refuse to comply, and if you tried to do something, it would not end very well. So.
Especially because remember, the other problem Valve will always have is Valve, by definition, most of the things they decree are unenforceable, mate, because no one is attempting to enforce them. Yeah. Like, put it this way. Do you imagine that it was Valve who found out that ES Force owned all those teams? No, it was fucking Richard Lewis and other people in the scene. Like, half the problem here is, this is one of the reasons, by the way, why I'll never, ever take that stance of like, oh, guys, we all have to be way more polite to Valve. And it's like, motherfucker, I've given Valve half the information they've gotten just by my fucking work. They wouldn't know half the shit I'm talking about. They don't have the connections. So when they then make decisions off that information, yeah, I think I should have extra say in what Valve does than a random person on the internet. Like, I don't think that's an unreasonable stance. So one of my problems in that case is, basically, you can break almost every Valve rule about, like, ownership, like, who does the team play for, who is he contracted for, if you just put enough layers of abstraction to make it really difficult to track down. Because Valve themselves are never going to look into it. Like, have you noticed there was absolutely no furore whatsoever about this topic I tried to bring up 2 weeks ago about NBK and the players who were contracted playing in tournaments for different teams than the teams they're contracted from? Nobody gave a fuck, guys, because it wasn't sexy enough. So as a result, because the story didn't have, like, a sexy sort of, like, fucking BuzzFeed type angle, no one actually cared. By the way, it was a blatant conflict of interest, and Valve absolutely fucked up how they handled it. Because if people don't know, because maybe people only saw the first video, the fucking corp was supposed to be, well, at least they have to sub out. Valve even walked that back, and then said that they didn't even have to do that. They could have actually, I mean, it just so happened, by the way, none of these teams, bizarrely, did play against each other. But if actually Vitality just hadn't been as shit as they were, NBK would literally have played, no, not Vitality, Not Vitality. Who am I thinking
OG.
of?
Well, double point.
OG, yes.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting what he was on Vitality, obviously. Yeah, if Vitality basically had won their game, have I got it the wrong way around? No, that's it. It's if OG had beaten Astralis. That's the way. If OG had beaten Astralis, or NBK would have played against the team that he has not only contracted against, but if you saw, contracted to rather, but if you saw his tweet after the tournament, that is the only team he is a member of right now. He is not in Double Pony anymore. His tweet after the tournament essentially said, that's it for this team. And Valve's just cool with that. So if they're cool with that and they're not even looking into that, like, basically, you could do all these things. Like, actually, the stupid thing is that people did just get rid of the academy squad. You should just renamed it and add it through your fucking cousin's brother own the team or whatever. You could have done all the same shit, basically. Maybe that's even the future. Because if people don't know, there's a principle that comes from the Soviet Union, which a lot of people don't understand, which is one of the reasons why you can actually still, on some level, make society run, even if you have some like super corrupt totalitarian government that's totally broken, is there'll always be certain areas within the system that it just can't be enforced. Like, there aren't enough people to watch those areas and check everything. And what people do is they just find a way around it and they just don't say anything, but everyone basically breaks that rule on a small level. So supposedly in the Soviet Union, they would have certain rules that were absurd and would have made it so that certain industry elements couldn't have worked. But what would happen that only could be enforced, like, you know, under the eyes of the people watching, the commissars, as it were. If you went to like the absolute, like, obscure fucking piss end of nowhere in Russia, some place that none of us even know the name of, and you were in some factory there, they were just getting around those rules if they had to, because otherwise they couldn't have met their numbers and they would, you know, probably be in a gulag anyway. So, like, the problem is, basically, if things are super fucked from the top down, so in this case, Valve's the dictator, actually, the real solution, unfortunately, is people should probably try and go around what Valve does, because obviously petitioning Valve doesn't really do anything at the moment.
Well, if anything, as we've seen, Valve seems to just walk back all of the rules that they make. I mean, in this way, they were kind of similar to, unfortunately, like, everybody wants to sing the praises of the ESIC, right? The Esports Integrity, Coalition, or whatever they are. The main issue I have with ESIC is the same issue that I have with Valve in this case, is that they walked back something that, in theory, was absolutely justified. And I'm not arguing for a developer in this case with Valve that does everything and controls everything, because I watched League of Legends for a while and there's a reason it's shit. So, like, there's a reason it could be a lot better than it actually is, and also a reason where, unfortunately, everybody who's involved with that scene has to, maybe they got in way later than it was actually, like, they didn't experience it back when they could see some potential in theory, and so they missed out on the parts where it makes me jaded because I've seen the direction the game has gone. But either way, like, we've seen the end result, we'll say, of a developer who is completely totalitarian or authoritarian in terms of how they approach their game. And the same is true for Blizzard. And this is a situation where you don't want to be in as a casual viewer or as a player or as anybody in between, content creator, whatever. You don't want to be in that position where your whole life essentially revolves around your career, your enjoyment, your hobby revolves around the whims of a developer. But in the case of Valve, like, they really should probably toe that line a little bit differently in some cases. Like, when there's obvious corruption, they're not going to get any PR flack, at least any justified PR flack, from people saying, like, oh, you're coming in here and stopping conflicts of interest. How dare you? Like, nobody's going to say that. And maybe some fans will mindfuck themselves into thinking it's not a conflict of interest when we have NBK, literally potentially playing in a tournament that his currently contractually obligated team plays in, but maybe even playing against them. Like, that's ridiculous that was walked back. And I am very surprised that, like, even from a public facing perspective, the CSPPA should be saying something about this, and they should be coming up with some sort of rule set that respects the players, because if that comes out, like, that could be massive in terms of if it did actually happen. And then it comes out that maybe there was something untoward. They should be trying to protect the players from, like, just the PR slander they're going to receive.
Have you noticed that's an angle as well that everyone's just cool with? The CSPPA isn't somebody that's about fairness and integrity and doing things the right way. They are just advocates for players. As in this particular scenario, that benefits players, because now players can be contracted to someone and play for a different team and get the next gig set up. So in their scenario, even though it's totally unfair, they're just cool with that, because they're almost acting as though, like, well, I'm just the prosecution for, why would I make a case against myself? It's like, because we're talking about what's right. Isn't that the whole point of this, to have like a proper scene? It's not about like, I don't know, because that's one thing I hate about the modern world, is that somehow people have become so jaded and cynical. They actually say things out loud like, well, of course he's lying. He's a businessman, so why would he say anything otherwise? It's like, because you can, you daft cunt. You can just be a human being. And like if anyone actually imagines me criticizing Flashpoint had anything to do with the success or failure of Flashpoint, I don't think you really know the mechanisms going on here. The reason why I could criticize him is because it's irrelevant to how the fucking company performed. Like, if something's legit, you just own it. You just say it as it is. It's the only way we're going to make it through the scene. Otherwise, we're going to have unclear communication because everyone's only acting in their own self-interests. Whereas if you haven't noticed, in these situations, because nobody has the power, like Valve's the one with the power and they're the absent partner, essentially. Without Valve, we can only get things done by working together. The TO has to work with the team org, has to work with the players. Because if the rest of them don't work together, the only person who can adjudicate is Valve, and therefore they either do nothing or they come in and just lay down the hammer, you know. So it's mainly the main problem in Counter-Strike is no one will look long-term.
Pretty frustrating from an outside perspective because, I mean, you don't want to... Like, the most frustrating aspect of all this, of all of the conflicts of interest, like, obviously I recently was discussing some of this stuff in recent content, and it was a conflict of interest with VP and ES Force owning Epicenter, obviously, and
for the RMR, yeah,
for the RMR, and this is an interesting point that I'll have to make on a broader platform at some point. But the Trident match that VP had, where they were actually down a few rounds to Trident before Trident had to be forced to forfeit because they couldn't find a relocation. It's the same situation as Flashpoint. And the head of one of the guys at ES Force said that Flashpoint, like, there should always have been, basically, like, Flashpoint should never have gotten to the point where it was. Like, basically, they were dissing Flashpoint for the situation, kicking them while they're down, so to speak, and dogpiling on. They had the same situation at their own tournament that nobody made any fucking fanfare over, where Trident was DQ'd, actually, because they couldn't connect. And there was no opportunity to offer a reschedule. And the fact that you can literally take the same guy's word against him is, I mean, that's pretty rich. But even
that basically shows like what we were talking about by the numbers. Yeah, if it had been the other way around and it was Nip that had lost the match, had won the game first time round, yeah, there never would have been a replay, obviously.
Yep.
That's it. By the way, this isn't like news to me, by the way, that people are corrupt. It's just what I tried to point out is if someone else claims their entire identity is that they do care, you just point out like they're lying. I understand the dark black pill that, like, when you actually realize nobody cares about rules, they just care about things that happening to people they like that are good and bad things happening to people they don't like. It's just the nature of the world, unfortunately. It's sad because it it's the reason why the joke is if I cured cancer, they'd just say something like, oh, look, now he's made all the cancer wards just a waste of time. What a bastard. It's like, you know, they'd have to find some way it was wrong, wouldn't they? That is just the standard of the world, I'm afraid.
I actually wanted to know what you thought about like the fact that even the RMRs themselves are not free from scandals. In fact, if anything, it's been the inverse because this is supposed to obviously if you're following the Richard Lewis Doom talk where he had like the CS Apocalypse or whatever stream that he did some time ago. That's a situation where he talks about how like the major has to bang, it has to be the best thing in the world. And I'm not sure if I 100% agree with that, but I follow his line of logic being that if you don't have a really banging major, then the people will just say, what the fuck is the point? Like, why am I even here? Right. You kind of need to convince people to like remember the good times before the pandemic hit, considering we've lost most of North America and lost a lot of other elements. Like we need a major to remind ourselves what we like to fall in love again with CS, so to speak, to use a cliche. And I understand that angle, but I was really expecting things to be better on the standpoint of the RMRs themselves. Like if you're following that line of logic and you agree with Richard Lewis that it's a real dire time and the major not being good would be a real bad thing for CS, then this must be a real like foreboding omen that RMRs have conflicts of interest left, right, and center, that there's massive issues with like, obviously there's giant scandals that are far reaching. I think this Flashpoint one was probably the longest running single story because of the fact that so many things came out. It's kind of funny that you made the point on By the Numbers about NIP constantly drip feeding out like little thing after little thing to all these news outlets, is that they're trying to stay in people's minds for longer periods of time and keep people talking about it. It's almost like they had the sort of protocol for this rematch thing, because it was going on. It must have been like a week plus.
Oh, there was about 10 threads on it, wasn't there? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, just forever on Reddit, on Twitter. Like everybody was talking about this for a real long time. And it was one of the very rare cases where I thought like, oh yeah, I wonder if this situation really is like continuing on this long or whatever. It was one of the rare cases where it was actually like more things were developing. It was the longest running developing story in recent history for CS. So the fact that that's been at like kind of the centerpiece, I guess I would go out on a limb and expect Valve is probably not happy with that. And maybe Flashpoint won't be running another RMR, but just the fact that many RMRs, it's not just the Flashpoint one, just so many of them have had like either scuffed production or really, really like concerning conflicts of interest or whatever the case may be, is like, that's pretty bad. And I have to wonder what's going to, you know, if we can error correct in time, so to speak, to quote unquote, save the major, to save CS. What do you think of that?
I mean, I also think some of that is the fact that everyone is just locked at home looking at their fucking computer 24/7.
Yeah.
So every molehill becomes a mountain. It's just all they've got to do, and it rage over everything. Now, one of the problems I have with that whole scenario, by the way, is people think like we're tooting our own horn, me and Richard, when we're like, it's going to be bad when we leave, guys. Like, you missed the point completely if you think that's the case. I wish there was people right now doing some of the stuff that I have to go and do. Like, why do I, someone who is not an investigative journalist, why do I have to be the one who goes and gets together all the admins of the other TOs and finds out what they would do if there was a scenario where some obscure security setting on the server was stopping a team from connecting that you wouldn't find out on the first day?
Yeah.
Why is that not only being said by no one, it's been requested by no one, and as far as I know, none of the other journalists have even attempted or even conceived of trying to find that information out. Because think about it, right? One thing you would have to immediately do before you could ever judge someone is know like the context of like what is the precedent in other cases. Apparently no one else, even listening to this call right now, needs to know that. They can just in some absolute vacuum go, well, this was bad, so you're the worst ever. It's like, well, what would ESL have done? What would Blast have done? What would Blast have done if there were an event where they didn't have an extra day spare? So like, I'd love to know the answer. I don't know what the answer is, by the way. I'd suspect in some cases they'd probably also be in bad scenario. I think some of them might get fucked over in exactly the same way. I'd love to know though. But again, these are the areas that sadly, like, people that aren't really very curious in esports for some bizarre reason. It's like, unless something's obvious, they just don't bother fucking looking into it, do they? It's just a young man's sport. It's just for fucking kids, isn't it?
We would like it to be different, though, surely. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah, in theory.
yeah, that's a far cry from reality, I guess.
Problem is, though, like, people won't understand this because I know they think jokes are unprofessional. I consider them entertainment, believe it or not. But to me, I've always tried to encourage people to come up to my level and do what I'm doing and think of the game as being more, think of it as being a sport, think of it as having historical context and being about competitive integrity and something greater and human potential. Sadly, I feel like the trend, I'm not winning on that one, mate. I'm fighting a losing battle there. If anything, hasn't the trend gone the other way? And now everyone is like a 12-year-old FaZe Clan /3 Clicks Philip fan, just going like, oof, oh, lol, what's going on, lol, vac. Like, that's what Counter-Strike is. So if anything, like, maybe I'm actually just fucking complaining about nothing. Maybe everyone's just cool how the scene is.
Well, the problem is that they can't see far enough into the future to know where it goes. Whereas, like, people like you who have been around long enough to analyze this kind of stuff and see trends. I mean, your moniker is obviously the esports historian. So the theory is you'd be able to figure that out if people actually give you the credit that you deserve.
Oh yeah, don't worry. There's definitely that factor of like, every single one of these incidents, I am just like the fucking James Franco meme, like, first time, because, like, yeah, no shit, we've all been doing this for 20 years. Because, like, yeah, basically, like, but, like, the obvious examples, like, cancel culture stuff. Like, I have to have motherfuckers who are friends of mine come to me in 2020 and be like, you won't believe this, I didn't even say anything that bad, and they're all trying to get me fired. It's like, why are you telling me that, you dumb fuck? Like, I read the room. Yeah, I know. I told you that 7 years ago that was coming. And you're like, and by the way, half the ones who get cancelled now were the ones telling me literally 3 years ago. Just ignore it. It's not a bit. They can't really do anything to you. And now they're like, please help. They destroy my whole life. Like, yeah, no shit. Like, I've been trying to tell you that. But the problem is, there's certain things people just have to directly experience before they sort of know the enormity of it. And these are examples of them. So what happens is you have some people in the scene who are just larping at being a journalist, where they're like, is that a big deal? It's like, well, you'll know in 5 or 10 years when you've seen it happen many times and you see what the effects are, you'll know why you have to cut these things off. Like, the idea where you even have to explain to people why a conflict of interest is bad, it's like, that's just disheartening in itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, surely we can all agree with that as the premise, the given going in. But they don't know because they still think, I mean, you would hope things like the coaching bug would start to change their mind. They still think naive things like, yeah, but can we know that he would cheat in that way? It's like, nah, the point is we can't. And that's why we have to have rules, mate. And we have to make it so that it's impossible it can happen, you know?
I don't know if you've ever seen any like tier 2, tier 3 games and try to watch the chat in Twitch.
No, almost never.
It is more or less just different Eastern European people who bet on the game, who either tries to spoil the game or talk shit about the team because they lost to an eco, which wasn't even an eco. It was
what do you mean by spoil the game, though?
Betting sites show score lines before.
Oh, they have it. They're like a literal spoil. Like they say, like, he loses the round 1v3. Right, I see. Okay.
So it feels like in those streams, I want to say like 80% of the people in chat isn't even there for watching CS.
That's a bit depressing.
Yeah, it's really depressing, especially if you share for some of the teams.
Nobody wants to talk about this, but I mean, there's a reason why they're like random tournaments that have like multiple thousands of viewers, but only 10, 12 people in the chat. Like some of it, are AFK, betters or whatever, but some of them might be botters instead. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? Like there's way too many viewers and way too little, like the ratio is completely off where I can get more chat interaction doing a 10 viewer stream than they can with, 2,000, 3,000 viewers allegedly.
Sure. Do we have a different angle? You got another one, Eddie?
Not on this topic. No,
we can swip up completely, yeah.
Sure. So on recent By the Numbers, I think Richard had mentioned something about bringing By the Numbers to like a Patreon exclusive where you just pay like bottom line like $1 or something like that.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I'd like to hear you expand your thoughts a little bit more on that. I think the idea in general seems to be a good one because it does gatekeep. We've talked about this a little bit before on another donator discussion, but now that, the idea has been a little bit more discussed in, BTN, I'd like to hear maybe how far along are you in that kind of thought process, or is this the new way forward to deter some of these low effort conversations from happening like in a Twitch chat or something? Like should tournament organizers start doing something like this where instead of broadcasting like on a Twitch channel, they do private broadcasts? I know when COVID happened, I follow the world of comedy, and a lot of comedians who have podcasts were doing live podcasts where essentially you paid like a ticket fee, like 15 to 20 bucks.
Oh, okay.
You joined in, and then they weren't limited to copywriting. They weren't, limited to DMCA. They could, in the instance that a lot of these comics are, very dirty comics, they were able to show like nudity or very obscene things. Okay. So it was kind of almost like a gate and a filter. Yeah. Do you think that moving forward, we could see something like that in the world of esports, maybe to, pull it back to a more, maybe not mature audience, but an audience that is passionate and has an understanding of the game? Like, I don't think you would turn into a random chess tournament and see the Twitch chat and it would be a bunch of people like, giving low information. Like, the conversation in the vernacular and all that, the game is so developed that I would expect it to be maybe a higher level of discussion.
Yeah,
things of that
makes
nature.
Sense. The problem with that is, like, unfortunately, I don't have a very satisfying answer in the sense that, like, that isn't like some massive plan that we've discussed. Like, that was basically a rant from Richard about, like, just an idea he was spitballing at the time, which is, like, his premise essentially is, let's just only have the people who actually appreciate the show get to consume the show. Now, the problem with that is, I fuck with the sentiment super heavy because, like, one thing people never understand is, one of the reasons why you'll always hear leveled at me accusations that don't really make sense if you actually look at like what I'm doing with my work, like the idea that I'm just doing everything for attention. Well, then why would I block everyone on Twitter? Or I'm only trying to like ride highs and stuff. Well, then why would I waste my time doing like 2-hour interviews with a guy who played Counter-Strike in 2002 that literally essentially make me like negative money over like the opportunity cost to what I did with those 2 hours? Like, it doesn't make sense, does it? But the problem is everyone is so trained to believe that everyone in the world of content is on the model of you try and get the most possible eyeballs, you convert the eyeballs into sponsor money, and that's how you make all your money. Therefore, the more attention, the more drama, the more everything, the more eyeball, the more money, right? The problem they can't understand in terms of like normal people is if you don't want to do that model. So in my particular case, I am the kind of guy where it's like, if I'm not welcome in a room, I'd fucking leave them, mate. I wouldn't try and convince people that I should be there or, oh, haven't you seen this? I'd say, all right, I'm not welcome. Peace. I'm off. In fact, you know what? I wouldn't even go to a room. I would host my own room, wouldn't I? And then you'd come to it if you were cool. So the problem is it's more like the fantasy of a content creator. Like, as fucked up as it sounds, I'm not even joking. Like, if I ever go to Reddit and read a thread about my work, I would actually do what I say. If there was a button I could click that said that IP banned my content from Reddit, I would click it. But that's only because I've read the comments. The problem is this. If I take a wider perspective, I do know that there are thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people watching the content who are probably liking it or loving it, who just don't comment. And that actually, it's one of the reasons why we also did the episode where we called out like those 10 notters or whatever. It's really just a small group of deeply mentally ill people making comments on the internet about it. And half of them, as you can see by the comments, either are secretly fans, they just can't ever express it in a positive way, or they don't watch the content and are essentially trying to gatekeep it out of the community by just downvoting it and making up lies about me and Richard and making every thread about like another struggle session show trial of what we've done in our lives and whether we're actually like pieces of shit and therefore should another person morally be able to click a video game discussion video. Like, there's obviously that. So I would say in the bigger picture, I can get perspective that like, look, it's only a bunch of morons. But I also think maybe the more interesting answer is, I don't know for the next year, because at the moment I'm sort of going a route where I'm building up sponsorship on my own channel. I just announced one recently. There'll be a video coming soon about this betting sponsor I have. I'm also going to potentially do some stuff with Monty and Richard. So some of that is the old model of you just get eyeballs and you get paid for it. But I personally am definitely, and I thought about this last year, I have put a lot of thought into different ways there could be like essentially subscription only content. And I actually think for talk shows, I even think I know how you would do it. Because essentially, you need to do a model where some of it is given away for free that makes people want to buy more of the same. As in, like, maybe the second half of it's the part that you pay for, and the first half's free. And the idea is, you know, it's both, they're both equally good, but if you want more, you pay for it. Because I do actually think the future isn't like a maximum numbers. I think the future is the opposite. I think it's like decentralization, and it's having small communities of people who specifically support your work, and then you build a little community out, and then you can have conversations without it being 12-year-old morons who are FaZe Clan supporters. You can have discussions about deep things because people have followed your work. Like, one of the problems, if you notice, I run into on talk shows and videos is I have to treat it as though the person watching has never seen a video of mine before. So I have to make the same setups. I've made this point many times before, but I'll go over it again. I wouldn't have to do that if it was like the same group of people following me, the same 1,000 people follow me for 5 years. I'd know, like, you know, it's kind of like if you've followed an academic, you're going to know the basics of his work. You're going to know what he's referencing. You could go a lot deeper and have a lot cooler conversations. So It is something that I've thought about. I don't necessarily know that there's a game plan for right now. I think Richard was also saying that from the perspective of he's obviously looking for a way out. Like, he's looking for a satisfying way to still maintain a lot of the benefits of his work at the moment, but cut out a lot of the negatives. Because if you haven't noticed, he's in no way exaggerating. The last 2 years or so have become completely intolerable in terms of like reading any responses to our work. Like, there was always morons, but like they've just, it's like a zombie horde has just overrun. There's too many now. It's just way too many.
I was going to say, wasn't that kind of the goal of Substack in a way, was to cater, you know, people who I guess primarily are journalists, but maybe other writers too. To
Put it this way, I'll give you a spoiler. I probably will have a Substack at some point in the future.
Now, is that with the goal of, you know, catering to a specific audience and not having, is it the glacier or the iceberg that you were referencing, where it's like you have to, you know, I think LS was talking to what's his face about this concept where he was getting upset about the Renekton thing or whatever.
No, it's more like that's just a way that people can directly support you, and then even better, there's no bottleneck. Like, the Substack goes as an email to your account. So my idea for that would also be, I don't want to live in a world where things like Reddit have any relevance. So what I think would be cool is I would still always do some writing for just, you know, general sites for free, you know, per hire. But I would like to have, for example, a Substack where you could subscribe to it. And one of the things I deliver every month is I do a really long historical article about some old school Counter-Strike player. Now, there's not many people in the world who want to read that, but if they can all support me with enough money, it might even financially make good money, you know?
Right.
But at the moment, that would never work in the current model, because if I write an article about some player from 2005, it's not going to get 60,000 hits, is it? It's going to get like 7,000. But the point is, if of the 7,000, 1,000 people are willing to pay X amount, that might suddenly be worth it.
Right.
So to me, it's just, I've been thinking of that more. Again, that's why, if you notice, my approach isn't just to take my current content and make half of it you have to pay for. It's more like find a way where, because let's be real, one thing I think we've all gone through the experience of online, I'm going to speculate on everyone's behalf, I'm just going to say probably true. I'm sure at one point, many of us online have been able to acquire things that technically should cost money through our computers. Now, when you do that initially, especially if you didn't have much disposable income, you think to yourself, well, as long as I can do this, why would I ever pay? You know, it's just free. Why not I just keep getting it? What you actually find when you grow up and you have a job and you have income, etc., is sometimes you want to support those people. Like if I have some small, I like a lot of electronic music, for example. I follow some super obscure electronic artists who only release through Bandcamp. And even though they put, you know, set your own price and you can put 0 and just download the album for free, their work is so good. I often put in like the real price of an album, like $10, and just give them $10, because I know all the $10 goes to that guy pretty much. It's a small fee, I'm sure, for Bandcamp. But in that way, I'm basically almost ensuring I'll get more albums out of this guy. So in that sense, they've basically made a mechanism where I actually might support the guy when I don't even have to. So I kind of want that for esports. I want a world where the people who are like the true fans of my content, like actually appreciate it, would have a way where they could encourage me to do more and do more of the stuff that I like. And, you know, there's a way that like we could cover all the spectrum, as it were.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts about it, like, as to what you were worried about, or what you do want to see or don't want to see if that was to happen?
Yeah, definitely. To tie 2 points into what you had just said, one of a channel that I started recently watching over the past 2 weeks, they have a Patreon, and per episode you can donate like 50 cents. And that way, you know, it's, you know, on my end, 50 cents, I wouldn't even think about that, like think twice.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
50 cents. But then, you know, like you said, if that's even 7,000, 6,000 people, that's still a fair amount of money that, you know, comes into covering costs. One of the things that I find interesting about intellectual discussions in podcasts that I've seen on YouTube is when it's two intellectuals, is they sometimes just agree to move past any explanation to, like, for lack of a better word, the plebs who might be listening in. And sometimes as a pleb, it's nice to just not be, you know, not have them break that fourth wall and be like, okay, to those that don't know this, blah, blah, blah. Like sometimes it's interesting to see the points that they get to without having to bring up the whole history of whatever topic that they're getting into. Because sometimes it gets philosophical or things of different nature. So I think one of the things that is really interesting about your content and the stuff that you do with Richard is sometimes even just in a discussion about like a current event in CS, you guys go off on tangents that become, you know, something that may not even be related to the world of CS. That might just be a overview or a very interesting perspective of the current way or the history of a certain, you know, event or a certain perspective. So definitely would be interested to hear more of that stuff, maybe behind some sort of gatekeeping mechanism where you guys feel a bit more comfortable to express things, like, you know, where you kind of have to pedal or beat around the bush, like, you know, maybe certain political things or certain things that are going on with certain governments around the world, and not have to worry about like, oh my God, this is going to get clipped. And then, you know, we have to go through this whole uphill bullshit of having to defend ourselves or whatever.
I mean, even what you're on right now, mate, like think about how many times, I know you're one of the newer people, but some of the older ones can attest to this. If you know how many times on this exact show, the Donated Discussion, I have just dropped mad jewels that no one else in the scene knows. And one of the reasons I do it here is because I know most people, even most of my fans, don't watch these. So as mad as it sounds, the secret is hidden in plain sight. Like it'll actually, they never get to Reddit, by the way, because people on Reddit are dimwits. So even though sometimes on these episodes, I'll reveal some information, like actually that guy doesn't do that at all, or actually I've heard they bought him for X amount, it never gets out into the wider community. So you are right. There would be sort of like a designated space where you would actually feel a bit more comfortable. Because another factor, I know it sounds mad, but the real reason also why we say like we want to make it Patreon only and fuck these like randoms, it's because it genuinely feels like you just served someone a meal and then they ate the meal, enjoyed it, and then spat in your face. You feel like you actually feel so disrespected, you want to literally deny them it in the first place. Like, I give you an example. I hate the idea that the same dickheads in the esports industry who are low-level people who try to talk shit on me and imply I shouldn't have a job in esports can watch a video of mine, get informed about all this behind-the-scenes stuff that I've taken directly from players and industry fit leaders that they have no connections with, and they get to be informed by that, and I guess to help them in their job. But then they can also turn around and bite the hand that fed them. Like, I would rather live in a world where they just can't access that info. Like, they're not going to be one of my patrons or something, or one of my subs, so they just won't know that info. Like, I know it sounds petty, because it is petty, but in that particular scenario, like, it's not even that we want validation. It's like, people go so far the other way with the disrespect. It's like, you actually want to literally just not even be in the same scene as them. It's like I said, I think I said this a few episodes back on By the Numbers. It used to seem bad when they would, every comment was like, I think he's an absolute dickhead and an arrogant bastard, but he does do good work. Back then you used to think, why do you have to bring that up? Why don't you just say I do good work? Now they don't even fucking say the good work part. They just say, like, you are X, Y, and Z, therefore his work doesn't matter. Like now it's like, we don't even get any concession.
It is pretty embarrassing to, like, look at the general response to stuff when you obviously, like, at every stage you guys do talk, especially By the Numbers, about, like, you give the devil their due, so to speak. You talk about if Device pops off in a match, you're going to talk about how Device was maybe the MVP of that match, even if you guys have, like, your own, like, personal gripes with them or whatever. And yet there's never going to be players who do that usually. Like, the players who do that are pretty few and far in between. And then obviously the average fan is just like, here he comes shitting on Device again or whatever. And it reminds me of probably the quintessential example from my day of this kind of behavior was when you would write some piece about TSM giving them their due for, like, maybe an earlier team iteration that actually was able to surprise and, you know, beat the teams that were put in front of them or whatever. And maybe one of the, like, that international IEM event that they won. And you do a write-up about that, and then all the TSM fans, like, finally some good journalism from Thorin. Like, who would have guessed?
It's actually just an indicator if you think about how mature the scene is, because really that's just something that comes with maturity, isn't it? It's the idea of, like, look, I don't have to like the person, but you obviously did a good job, you know? Because the problem with that is, like, it really is a very immature worldview of, like, right, but if I don't like someone, they can never have ever been right or done anything good. It's like, who the fuck are you? Like, that's some, like, 2D level fucking depth there, mate. What? Like, think about this, right? Does the fact that ESL stole people's EPL slots suddenly make ESL Cologne not an awesome stadium event? Like, what's even the connection? There is no connection. Like, it just shows that, like, this is why I've made this point as well on By the Numbers. The moment that the Counter-Strike community got really boring for me was when I realised we were just in an American high school movie and we're all 14-year-olds. This is garbage. This is fucking garbage. Like, I left school, like, what must be like 20 years ago now. Like, I don't want to be part of a fucking high school. I mean, that's also, by the way, one of the things that's always been a motivator for Richard to potentially leave, as you might have seen with his, like, reference to the Declan Hill stuff, is that it doesn't matter how old the esports industry gets or how much money it gets. We're on some, like, Dazed and Confused level shit. The moron fan is always 14 years old. And because of that, we can never go beyond that. Because at the moment, in any other space, right, you cater to all the spectrum of people available. We don't. In esports, we're all trying to just get the maximum numbers. So everyone is catering to the lowest common denominator, and that is the 14-year-old moron FaZe Clan fan. It's not a thinking man or someone who wants some specialised content. So no one's catering to those people, unfortunately. It's why another aspect that I've brought up many, many times, and sadly I'll now never get to do it with Flashpoint, will I? But it was something I was going to do, was I also in the future want it to be where, yeah, if you listen to the mainstream and it's the final, yeah, of course, it's Anders and Semler and it's all the people you want to hear. But I would have had it where there would be a secondary stream, and the secondary stream is like me and Lurpus or something. And it's like the hardcore stream, or it's the, you know, expert fan only stream, whatever. The idea is we're going for a totally different angle. We're not commentating the game, we're breaking it down, or we're having discussions around things or whatever. Like, in my opinion, I want to live in a world where we also cater to basically the actual hardcore fans of the game. I don't want to cater to a guy who vaguely watches the game. I want to cater to the guy who's the ultimate fan of the game, because it's me, essentially.
To right off that point too, something that I recently found through just my YouTube recommendations is I was watching a lot of Steele's videos from like 2015 and 16.
Okay.
About like Counter-Strike game theory, which were really awesome.
Oh, there's some great ones, yeah.
Yeah. And recently it started recommending his current channel, and it's all like the clickbaity, like you can tell that like
It's just become like all the other streamers, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's some thumbnail that's like maybe decently photoshopped with him on it in a character and some clickbaity title like, oh my God, he did what? And it's like how the mighty have fallen kind of thing, where it's like, but it's like, to be fair, that's who he has to advertise to. And with what you were saying is the current advertisement model is as many eyeballs as possible. Now, do you think with like right now, Valorant, like one of the things is there's a lot of the, what is the term? Some co-broadcasting? Is that
co-stream?
Co-stream. I think that would be really interesting because like it would be cool to see like you and another player or maybe a player that you enjoy talking to, because I know that there'll be high level commentary, the game will actually be discussed, and there'll be banter. Like the thing that sometimes is hard to watch with modern broadcasts is they feel very clean. And sometimes it's nice to just be able to watch something and just know that like people are going to speak their mind and they're not going to have to worry about, oh shit, we might lose the advertisers, or you know what, I can't really give this opinion because it's unbiased to, the teams are playing, and I need to maintain some sort of like neutral attitude to the teams that are playing currently, or I don't want to show favor in one degree or the other. It'd be nice to just have a stream where it's just you just spin straight fire of, this guy is underperforming, he looks like shit right now. Like, they wouldn't say that on the mainstream. You'd be like, oh, he's having a rough one, but will he come back? They're trying to create that narrative to make it entertaining, but it would be nice to have,
I'm basically gonna, as a spoiler, because this will be in the video I'm probably gonna do tomorrow, I'm basically gonna do that as part of the sponsorship I'm doing. I'm gonna essentially do, like tomorrow there'll be one, I'll give you a spoiler right now. I'm basically, for the final of Flashpoint, I'm gonna do like a pre-game desk that's just me and a couple of other people, and it'll be alternate to the stream, but it'll just be the desk, because essentially like what I would have done if I'd been on Flashpoint, but my version of it, and I'm gonna do that, but it's gonna be selective. Like, here's the problem, I'm not gonna go full on like I would if I actually worked for them and do the whole event. I'm going to do it like I'll pick specific playoff series or matches, and I'll decide in advance it would be cool to get these people involved, and we'll do something like that essentially. Because one of the reasons I wanted to do that is, first of all, it's a great alternative thing to give the sponsor, but then secondly, I don't have to have any constraints that anyone else does. Like in this case, because I'm going to do a pre-game desk, I don't even need the game feed. As soon as the game goes live, I'll just host their stream. So essentially, I can do a desk that has none of the concerns everyone else does. I don't have to hit these particular sponsors. I don't have to show this graphic. I can do whatever the fuck I want. So I'm sure it'll be mad raw when I initially do it, but the idea is over time I can sort of craft my own way of doing it and do an alternative approach. So that is something I'm trying to build up to do, because I've realised, as you say in the co-streaming case, there are even certain game scenarios where you could just do it yourself from home. So I might even in the future, along those lines, like desks are obviously my world, but I've even been thinking, I won't say with who, of maybe even getting co-streaming rights to a couple of events, depending on if they have a problem with the gambling sponsor. And maybe I even do some big games and actually commentate them. We'll see. Because again, I have a different approach and different kind of style of how I like to hear it. So I do have some of those things in mind.
It's good to know.
Because I do think that's the future as well. I'll even say as well, by the way, the Steel example is also an example of why this community is actual fucking trash. Which is, anyone who's ever read Reddit knows that they all pretend to be the most hardcore tactical experts about Counter-Strike to ever live. But none of them care about tactical, none of them care about that in content. None of them do. So the videos you're talking about, I've looked them up now. I was just going back and looking at some of them, right? Some of them have some nice views, like some have like 100k, like, 90k. Dude, these videos are 5 years old. How do some of these videos... Like, you realise if this... Here's the irony. Because League of Legends has so many just raw amount of players, it means that even if it's niche to like in-depth shit, it can still pop off. Like, you could still do a video like 300k views or something in League. The idea that these views aren't enormously high, it's because people don't care, mate. Here's the sad fucking black pill about Reddit in CSGO. They only care about tactics if it's to bash me, because I'm perceived as not talking about tactics. If someone comes and they only talk about tactics, they won't even watch that guy because he's not entertaining. So as a result, you're in this mad scenario where what they claim to want wouldn't succeed. It doesn't. Like, I've always said this. What edgy things have Maui Snake and Alan Hender ever done to anyone? Nothing. But people don't give a fuck about their content. It doesn't get upvoted. It doesn't get put on Reddit. No one cares. So unfortunately, this is also why we're in high school. Everyone's pretending that they're a fan of X, Y. Basically, everyone's pretending like, yeah, I actually think my favourite movie is probably The Bicycle Thieves. It's an excellent piece of cinema. And then their real favourite movie is a fucking, whatever Adam Sandler released last year.
Transformers, Fast and Furious.
That sort of level. Now, the problem there is, you can like whatever you like, but don't fucking feed us a line of bullshit 24/7. Because so many people have tried what you're saying. Anders is doing it right now. You know, Anders does that feature with, like, I think it's produced by some of the not double tap. What the fuck's the name?
Do Not Peek, yeah.
Do Not Peek, there you go. Scoops' company. Right, when he does his work with them, dude, have you ever seen what the views on those videos are? They are ass.
Because they're nothing. Yeah.
Oh, they're depressing. You wouldn't believe. By the way, he's getting like Yanko to break down some like fucking epic moment in the game. No one gives a fuck, mate. Doesn't matter how good the editing is. Doesn't matter that it has Anders involved and promoting on his stream. No one gives a fuck. No one watches it. It's all poserism in this esports scene. They're all fake. They don't care. The same guy telling you that I don't understand tactical Counter-Strike goes into a server and plays a Mirage Pug and throws those flashes that don't flashbang anyone, but you just throw them to get the utility out of your arsenal. They're all noobs. That's the joke. It's why the one thing that will always trigger people on Reddit is if you ever look up, you know, in CSGO they have it, but it's more famous in League. You know, you can just look up online what the actual distribution of people in the different ranks are.
Yeah.
And you know, the stat in League is always something mad, like everyone except for something mad, like the top 15% is in like gold or below. And so basically is a noob, like doesn't know fucking anything about the game. Well, the problem with that is there's no way that all of that 15% is the people on Reddit. Like, the distribution is going to be a lot of noobs. So essentially, Reddit is just a bunch of people who are terrible at the game just going, well, since I don't have to actually prove I'm good at the game, I'm just going to say hello loads, and that's everyone else who doesn't know anything. It's actually boring when you find that out. It's just rubbish, isn't it?
It is, yeah, definitely. I think definitely with my experience playing CS pubs recently too, like the retakes, it's really interesting to see the players who claim that, oh my god, yeah, I'm this Faceit level, then the quiet ones who are, you know, top fragging in the retake server that are clearly getting ready for a scrim or something, who, you know, they're using proper utility, they're taking the right fights and things of that nature. It's something that I think it trickles down from, you know, the Reddit. You know, everyone assumes that, okay, this is the way that I should act online. And then you get into these public servers and it's a mess. People, you know, they claim, yeah, I know the game, I play the game, and then you get in there and it's like, you're not playing the game. You're playing like a very low resolution version of the game where you just happen to do one or two niche things that you've seen a pro do. Then you think, oh yeah, look, I'm so good, I deserve this rank. And it's, you know, I think it ties back into what you're saying about it being a young person's, it's catered to young people. And, you know, a lot of times it's like, there's a lot of concepts into esports that just don't get considered because, you know, they're kids.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you just think from an anthropological angle, the problem young people, especially teenagers, have is they don't know who they are. And unfortunately, in a lot of Western societies, we don't have a method to particularly help them find out who they are. We have a shit thing called just going to college and just pay us a load of money and then start a shit job. So unfortunately, when they don't know who they are, because they don't know what it's like to have substance and depth and stand for something, they just take sort of like the veneer of that. They just look at someone like teenagers do and go, oh, he seems cool, so I'm just going to pretend to be like them. And what they don't understand is, like, for like 10 minutes you can get away with pretending to be like that, but eventually someone's going to notice there's no depth there. There's nothing to sort of poke through. It's just a veneer, isn't it? So I feel like a lot of young people totally misunderstand that.
I think a lot of it too has to deal with the fact that it's an online culture. I play a lot of Magic the Gathering, at least before COVID. And when I would go to my LGS, my local game store, you know, there'd be about 30 to 40 people playing a constructed tournament. And the young ones that would come in, you know, they weren't obnoxious. They would sit there, they would watch, they would learn. After the match, maybe in between matches, they might ask a question too. And it was like really awesome because, you know, people who are new, like, you know, when you're young in real life and, you know, you may be 16, 17, you know, like you might not have friends there you go because it's a interest, you know, it's like, how do you break ice? It's like being able to go, hey, that was a good game. Why did you do X, Y, and Z? Or, hey, can I look through your deck? Why is this in your sideboard? Why did you put these cards in? Like all those questions get asked out of it, like a curiosity of wanting to know the game and wanting to get better. And I think a lot of curiosity gets killed online because people end up going almost like a ego trick where it's like, oh my God, I lost this because of this, and this, or oh my God, like I should have played this better, or my team, or blah, blah, blah. There's not a lot of self-reflection, but I mean, again, it goes into, I don't think anyone would expect a young person to really be that self-reflective, you know, until, like you're saying in the recent By the Numbers, like the 30s are the new 20s, right? So
yes.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's why, actually, if you haven't noticed, one of the weird things about whenever we have these discussions either on this show or on my Discord is essentially most of these problems actually aren't to do with esports. They're just problems that people in current society have. And so they tend to point to like bigger issues that, I mean, we can't personally ourselves solve, you know. It's like, you know, like I say, like, what is the role of young men in society, essentially? Like, we're just arguing about what the symptom is, not the actual fucking disease, as it were.
I'm not really sure. I think since kids are so impressionable, we can actually, like the older people who also have been there a while, can fix it. When I got into CSGO, which was really late, it was only 3.5 years ago. Back then, ESL had real broadcasts in between maps, and when it was downtime, they had something on their streams. Usually, it was like a pro trick from nothing or some old clip from some analyst desk or something like that. But now it's just a timer. And each time I bring this up to someone who knows something about the stream or who actually really likes CSGO, they're like, yeah, who cares what's in between maps? But if you are like a 12-year-old kid or 11-year-old and watch a series, what happens in between the games? If somebody is actually talking about the differences between what's good and bad for the scene and stuff like that, I think that would be some way to at least get some of these people to actually
I know what you mean,
in it.
But to me, that's also why the unfortunate, like what fucks it up is the mechanism that means that doesn't work is what I said earlier, which is that the current model for how people think you make money in esports is it's just sponsorship. So essentially you have to have as many eyeballs as possible. So unfortunately, they think that incentivizes you to just cater to that 12-year-old kid. And basically, essentially what they do is they sort of say, what does the 12-year-old kid want? Whereas what you actually should do as an artist is say, what does he need? Which is what you're saying, basically. Like, if you feed certain aspects of, like, I don't know, higher aspirations, like to understand the game, to know more, to understand nuance, yeah, you obviously build a better scene. The problem in this case is they're being super cynical and just caring about, you know, what's going to pop in the next 5 seconds. I agree with you as a principle. Again, it's something with Flashpoint that I wanted to do in general was head more towards this approach. It's just that at the moment, as I say, it's not really a scene of leaders in esports.
I think something interesting that Trick2G actually did a while ago that catered something that was pretty cool was his sub wars, because I think something that a lot of people appreciated about that was, you know, because they were like bronze versus silvers or silver versus gold or gold versus platinum, sometimes the lower ranked team would win because they would, you know, try harder or feel like, you know, they had something more to prove.
Okay.
And it put people like who, you know, if you're in bronze or silver and gold, it's not very often that you're playing against a streamer or even on stream where once you get to like Diamond 4 or something like that, that's where a lot of like content creators will have smurfs where they do silly builds and then they do clickbaity titles like rank 1 player tries new build, and it's like what they don't tell you is they're playing at like a plat 1 MMR or something like that. So being able to like have stage time in quote unquote, or like stream time as like a low ranked player, sometimes that's when that like self-reflection kicks in, like, oh wow, I was just on stream of like 10,000 people and like, you know, my nerves started to get to me. How can I like start to deal with ththese nerves? Should I like work out or find like meditation or maybe a new way to focus? Like I think having some sort of thing, you know, they started to do with Clash, but I even think Clash isn't enough per se, because you know, it's just the people that are playing within it to have some sort of degree of getting the community involved in that level. Because then the young players have something to aspire to, where right now it's like most people, it's like, what are you aspiring to? It's like, oh, well, I'm going to climb the top of the ladder. It's like, you know, it's really hard to find like committed teams like it used to be for League when there was like a boards dedicated to it where you'd find a team, you'd play ranked 5s. There was a dynamic that was a little bit separate than the actual solo queue-esque environment, which if you've done any Clash now, it's starting to redevelop to that, where even if you're playing in like a Clash 3 or Clash 4, they're trying to emulate some aspect of the pro scene where people aren't just taking stupid trades. They're not making small individual mistakes to a certain degree, to as much as they can. So I think it'd be interesting to get the lower level community, the people who maybe watch a lot of the tournaments who might not have the time to play the game, to get them involved in that kind of degree.
Fair enough. Does anyone else have a take on this?
I do wonder, just generally in the CS space specifically, if it's not too late, so to speak, for some of these lower tier scenes. I mean, you have a bit of a, I wouldn't necessarily.
By the way, as a general sort of stance, so you know where I'm at on this, it's actually not too late for anything. We could literally fix every single thing in the scene. We could literally make the scene everything we ever dreamed it was. The issue why I say it's too late is because essentially I've just found out that the people involved, who at every stage you need the help of, don't care. As soon as I've made this point, but I'll say it again. As soon as I found out that I wasn't actually helping the Astralis players against their org, I was just helping them temporarily battle their org when they're actually on the same side as their. That gets boring at that point in time. There's no one innocent in that equation. I'm just helping one cunt who's not as good at business try and beat a cunt who's slightly better than him at business. In that scenario, I don't even know if he deserves to win. It's just two cunts who only cared about money. There was never any love of the game. So the real problem is just that I say it can't be saved just because I kind of essentially I know that all the people involved, they're just going to go down with the ship. So in that scenario, I just feel like there is no hope. But it all could be fixed. I absolutely think it. Essentially, if we could pause now and reallocate who does what, and support the right things, it could all be saved. Of course.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my general point was that it feels like the momentum is going in a negative direction.
Yes,
and it's really hard to reverse that, even if you know what needs to.
Most people don't want it, by the way. So it's worse than that. Most people are happy with how it's going.
Yeah. Of course. Because that's part of the major issue is while the momentum is going in a certain direction, you have to first alert people that this direction is negative. You have to convince them of why that is. Sometimes you have to tell them that it's even going anywhere because some people just don't even notice that there's momentum in any direction. And so you have to get everybody on board who could potentially assist with this, and also who would be like the general public, so that you could get some community backing.
Counter-Strike right now is basically a meme that I posted on Twitter a few months back about CSPPA. It's a meme where there's a boat, just a little rowboat with 4 people in it, and the rowboat is tipping so that 2 people are at one end that's filling with water through a hole, and there's 2 people at the end that's tipped up who aren't getting affected by the water because the water's at the other end of the boat, right? And the 2 people who are at the end of the boat with no water in are just going, glad it's on their end. That's Counter-Strike right now. There's team orgs that are well, I don't care that everyone's losing money because they think they've got enough money to survive. There's players who are well, who gives a fuck about that? I'm making my money. And there's tournament organisers that are well, you know what? We actually have no path to ever succeed, but if we just make sure all of our rivals go bankrupt, in a way, haven't we won? And it's that's everyone's mentality. Everyone's mentality is yeah, it is sort of fucked, but as long as I'm not the next one on the chopping block, that's all right, isn't it? Whereas to me, it's I don't know how anyone wins out of this scenario, basically. I genuinely don't know how ESL think they win. As far as I can tell, they don't actually have a plan. They're just, as I say, hoping everyone else dies, basically.
It's King of the Hill.
Yeah, basically.
Well, I don't get how ESL at all can have monetary issues. They have the most viewers, they have the most events, and they have the most streaming hours.
Because you just don't make that, because there's not that much revenue to be made.
If you go with this model, you should have a monetizing model for it, right? Or is the monetizing model that you just get hours of ad time? Because that
so essentially that's all they're selling. Yeah, no, the whole model doesn't work, mate. It's broken. That's why what's hilarious about the fact that people don't try pay-per-view is. The best argument against pay-per-view would be that you don't need it, right? You just succeed with a free model. The problem is you don't succeed with the free model either. So to me, again, this is another example of why I find it so infuriating. Essentially, there's people telling me, I'm not willing to try this. It's well, we're all going to die if we don't. Yeah, but that might not work. It's but we all die if we don't, right? Yeah, but I don't know if it'll work. It's you're stuck in a loop here, mate. Get out.
What do you think is the most foundational, if you had to pick for some of these things, because there's all these different topics, especially regarding CS, but esports in general, where people have to figure out how to make things sustainable from a financial perspective. Is it teams? I guess, is there something that is low hanging fruit that can be done right now, off the top of your head? That would
I could give you one,
for,
but
teams.
People wouldn't like it.
Okay.
So first things first. If we use the boat analogy, we need to start plugging some holes, right? We can't plug them all immediately, but we can plug a couple of holes, and that gives us more time. So I'll tell you one thing that you would implement tomorrow if you wanted to start fixing things. You have to have a salary cap. Now, no one wants to hear that because everyone in this scene worships pro players. But how does it make any sense for the top pro player to make $30,000 a month and then his team never make anything close to that off him and what he did? Like, I've said this before. Everyone on some fucked up level, because we live in a neoliberal fucking dystopia, essentially agrees with elements of like socialism and the idea that like, workers are all like oppressed and fucking like exploited. They are on some level, by the way, but everyone agrees with that as a given, right? And then they take that terminology and those concepts and they come marching into esports and Counter-Strike and they apply them where it is literally 100% counter to the facts of the matter. So we're told, and it's framed as though players are being exploited all the time in CSGO, right? Explain this to me. How is a FaZe Clan player who gets paid $20,000 a month to play Counter-Strike and not even be top 10 in the world and never makes anywhere close to that back to his team in value or revenue, how is he being exploited? By definition, he's exploiting them. It's the other way around. That's how topsy-turvy our scene is. He's the one exploiting them. You realise, by the way, I don't care how big the contract is, whatever LeBron gets paid in the NBA, his team makes way more than that off him. Way more! This would be like if his team made 100,000 off him and still paid him 80 million. I mean, I've given an extreme example there, but you get the premise. That would be absurd, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So the problem is, if you put a salary cap, no one's going to like it because it's going to be unfair, isn't it? But I tell you what, it means tomorrow we can actually have like manageable salaries. And every new dickhead in the scene can't just inflate the salary cap. Like, if people didn't see it, I posted it on my Twitter today. One of the episodes of Know-It-Alls with me and Lurpis, I basically got him to just break down the basic principle of how a salary market exists. And by the way, don't feel like I'm condescending to you right now. I didn't know this stuff a few years ago because I'd never looked into the field of economics. Like everyone else, I knew a bunch of buzzwords and I vaguely thought I understood some concepts. So when people say things like, if you don't want an inflated market, just don't inflate the market. It's like, that's not the way it works. So like, go look at this clip that I got clipped on my clip channel. It explains basically how who determines the salary in a scene. Essentially, unless you have like strict measures like that, I don't know how you can just economically make the game work at the moment. Because as we say, as Lagger's point alludes to, you've already got basically as many viewers as you could ever want, way more than we ever thought we'd have in CSGO, but they just cannot be monetized in the old model to make it enough. Because as he says, by default, ESL, in a world where like it could be monetized properly, ESL would be an amazing company, wouldn't they? And do all the best events. But they're not. Even they're in deep shit and we're like about to be sold to the Chinese as a result.
Is that true? I
already reported. It was at the beginning of 2020. They were going to be sold, I think it was Huya or something.
Yep. And the deal fell through at some point. And I guess they had some really weird news report that came out where they basically said that they could be solvent by the next end of the year, but they would have had to like restructure significant things, which I guess we saw anyway, because obviously like DreamHack became the same thing as ESL now or whatever. They've folded try to merge the brands, so to speak. So they are.
Which just looks like fucking rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, by the way. Basically.
How do you think? I don't know if this is too spicy, but how do we deal with not only the overinflation and over evaluation of players, monthly salaries comparatively to their performance, as well as investors will say international investors coming in and just buying stuff out at a ridiculous price, and it's almost like it's kind of shooting ourselves in the foot to some degree, as you were implying there, right? Do we put a cap on the type of investors that can come into the game, the amount of money that can be spent? Because obviously from a low resolution perspective, you would think more money would definitely help develop the game, but it's almost like that like old idiom, like more money, more problems kind of thing. How do you think there's a solution to the type of investing that's coming in, or even the money? Because like you said, there's not a lot that we can do. We can't be like, hey, hold on, you can't trade Device for $1 million, or we think someone that's a top 10 team, we can't say, hey, stop paying that guy $20,000 a month for sucking ass. Like,
yes.
So what kind of things do you think can be even done about that?
I don't really know, because again, like if I have to literally be the one who controls it tomorrow, I have to start just controlling the input and the output variables. So essentially you'd need like a league like Flashpoint, right? Where the idea would be, obviously this didn't actually work in the case of Flashpoint, but you would be selective as to who you let join the tournament, wouldn't you? Like in theory, this is what they claimed they were doing, but just it never ended up being reality. Like what people don't understand about Flashpoint is if those teams actually had cared about Counter-Strike, they could have bought every bloody player they wanted. They could have had all the teams. They could have just bought the top 10 teams almost. You know, there's a couple would have sold. Like maybe Navi wouldn't have sold as much, but many of them would. The problem is those teams, like the Orgs, lied and they weren't actually interested. But as you're saying, you wouldn't just want any Tom, Dick and Harry who comes through the door to be part of this league. You'd want you'd vet legit people who've been there a long time, or people who have a good business model, or people who have a stable business plan over the years. They're not just going to spend all the money on year one and then be out on year three. Yeah, you would want a lot of that. It's one of the reasons, by the way, why again, no fan wants to hear it. Like as I said before, the way that the European Super League idea was even approached by fans, that they are super hostile to even the concept and forget any application of it. They're not willing to consider it. Well, the problem is things like franchise leagues are the only way people who aren't like the game dev can start to get any kind of a grip on these variables. Like, as far as I know, you can't do it otherwise. This video was kindly supported by Eddie, Kris with a K, Lager15, Pronogo, Shenlong, Zachary Carter, Adam Ochs, Alexander Rao, Andreas Kroknes, Animosity, Dean Tanglis, ErikHillestad, Hades, Jdubs, Jensen Goh, Joseph Ginsburg, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and as always, special thanks going out to my boy Jerky's Minion. Want to suggest topics or guests for my shows? Want to ask me questions in my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers? Who are the upcoming guests? Maybe you want to be part of one of those discussions I do where we nerd out. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrolluminati today by using the Patreon link in the description box below.